Prologue, the fever and the call. The thermometer beeped 3 times before I could bring myself to look at the number glowing in the darkness. 104.3 degrees Fahrenheit. My hands shook as I pressed my lips to Luca's forehead, his skin burning against my mouth like an accusation. 7 months old. 7 months of keeping him secret, keeping him safe, keeping him mine. And now his tiny body was failing, and I was about to destroy everything I'd built to save him. "Sure, baby," I whispered, though he wasn't crying anymore. That was worse. The silence was so much worse than the screaming that had woken me 20 minutes ago. Now he just lay limp in my arms, his dark eyes, Giovanni's eyes, half closed and glassy with fever. I'd given him infant acetaminophen 2 hours ago. Should have worked. It always worked. My phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark, holding the number I'd deleted 15 months ago in a symbolic act of freedom that now felt like the height of stupidity. I'd thought cutting Giovanni Ferrante out of my life would protect our son from his world. From the violence that clung to him like expensive cologne. From the darkness that had nearly destroyed me during our brief, catastrophic marriage. I'd been so fucking naive. The pediatrician's after-hours line went straight to voicemail. Of course it did. It was 2 a.m. on a Friday, and I was alone in a city that still felt foreign despite a year of trying to call it home. Boston had seemed far enough from New York to start over. Close enough to rebuild a career in corporate law that didn't involve navigating the ethical minefield of my ex-husband's legitimate business dealings. Luca made a sound, not quite a whimper, more like air escaping, and his eyes rolled back slightly. No. No, no, no. I was moving before conscious thought caught up, grabbing my keys, the diaper bag, my wallet. Shoving my feet into shoes without bothering to tie them. The hospital was 12 minutes away. I could make it in 8. Could make it. But as I strapped Luca into his car seat with trembling fingers, watching his little chest rise and fall in shallow, rapid breaths, I knew 8 minutes might be 7 too many. The hospital would need medical history. They'd need to know about genetic conditions, blood type, family medical records I didn't have because I'd never asked. Because asking would have meant admitting I was pregnant, and admitting I was pregnant would have meant, what? Giving Giovanni leverage over me. Letting him turn our child into exactly what he'd always said children were in his world. Targets, liabilities, leverage. Or had I really just been a coward, too afraid to face him after I'd already signed the divorce papers, already convinced myself I could do this alone? The rain started as I pulled out of the parking garage. Heavy drops that turned the Boston streets into rivers of reflected neon. Red lights blurred past. I ran, 2 of them didn't care. Let them arrest me. Let them throw me in jail. None of it mattered if Lucas stopped breathing. Please. Please God, please. I wasn't religious. Hadn't been since my parents died when I was 24, leaving me orphaned and alone and forced to figure out how to be an adult without a safety net. But I prayed now, bargaining with a God I didn't believe in, promising anything, everything, if he'd just let my son live. The emergency room entrance appeared through the rain like salvation. I ran through the automatic doors with Luca in my arms, rain streaming down my face, mixing with tears I hadn't realized I was crying. I need help. My son. He has a high fever and he's not responding normally. The triage nurse took one look at Luca and everything shifted into high gear. Suddenly we were surrounded by people in scrubs, asking questions I could barely process through the panic. Age, weight, medical history, allergies. Is the father present? The question hit me like a physical blow. No, I heard myself say. It's just me. They took Luca from my arms. Actually took him, pulled him away from me, and disappeared through double doors I wasn't allowed to pass. A kind-faced woman in purple scrubs guided me to a small room with harsh lighting and plastic chairs that had been sat in by too many desperate people before me. Someone will be with you shortly to get more information. Try to stay calm. Stay calm. As if that was possible when my entire world was 7 months old and burning up somewhere beyond those impenetrable doors. I collapsed into one of the chairs, my wet clothes leaving dark patches on the plastic. My phone buzzed. Jessica, probably. Checking in after I'd mentioned Luca seemed fussy earlier. I couldn't bring myself to answer. What would I even say? The minutes stretched like taffy. I stared at the motivational poster on the wall, something about hope and healing, and wanted to rip it down. Hope didn't cure mysterious fevers. Hope was a luxury I'd lost somewhere between the divorce and this moment. When the doctor appeared, young and tired-looking with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, I knew what he was going to say before he opened his mouth. "Ms. Grant, I'm Dr. Sullivan. Your son is stable for now, but we need to run some tests. His fever is concerning, and given his age and symptoms, we want to rule out some serious infections." "What kind of infections?" "Meningitis is our primary concern. We'll need to do a lumbar puncture, a spinal tap. It's the only way to know for certain." He paused, and I saw the hesitation in his face. "But I need you to authorize the procedure, and I need complete medical history. Particularly his father's. Does he have any history of immune disorders, genetic conditions, anything we should know about?" Giovanni's face flashed in my mind. Strong jaw, dark eyes that missed nothing, the scar on his left eyebrow from a fight he'd never explained. I knew almost nothing about his medical history. He'd never shared that kind of vulnerability with me. Never let me past the carefully constructed walls he'd built around himself. "I don't know," I admitted, and the words tasted like failure. "Is there any way to reach him? This could be crucial. Blood type alone might help us. And if there are any genetic factors we should be aware of." "I can try," I interrupted, because the alternative was standing here explaining why I'd kept my ex-husband's child a secret for 7 months, and I couldn't do that. Not now. Not when Luca was dying. Dr. Sullivan nodded, relief evident in his expression. "Please do. Time matters here." After he left, I pulled out my phone and stared at the blank screen like it was a weapon that could destroy everything I'd carefully built. I didn't have Giovanni's number anymore. I deleted it in a symbolic gesture that had felt empowering at the time. But I knew someone who would. My old attorney had handled the divorce. She'd have his contact information in the case files. It was past 2:30 a.m. She wouldn't be in her office. But I had her cell phone number saved for emergencies. This qualified. She answered on the 4th ring, voice thick with sleep. "Lauren, is everything okay? I need Giovanni's phone number. It's an emergency." There was a pause, the kind that meant she was fully awake now, her lawyer brain already calculating angles. "Lauren, I don't think that's a good idea. The divorce was contentious enough without reopening. My son is in the hospital." The words came out flat, emotionless, because if I let myself feel anything right now I'd shatter. "They need his father's medical history. Please." Another pause. Longer this time. "Give me 5 minutes. I'll text it to you." Those 5 minutes felt like drowning. I paced the small room. 7 steps one way, 7 steps back, counting them over and over to keep my mind from spiraling into all the ways this could go wrong. Text came through. A number I'd once known by heart. Had seen light up my phone with promises he'd never kept. Plans he'd cancel at the last minute. Apologies that meant nothing because the pattern never changed. I stared at it for a full minute before my finger started dialing. Each number felt like stepping off a cliff. No way back. Only the terrifying freefall ahead. Rang once. 3 times. Then his voice, deeper than I remembered, rough with something that might have been sleep or irritation. "Who is this?" I'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my head during the pregnancy. Different versions of this conversation where I was strong, collected, in control. Every single version shattered the moment I heard him speak. "Giovanni," I said, and my voice didn't shake. That was something. "It's Lauren. I need to tell you something." Silence stretched across the line, thick and dangerous. I could hear him breathing, controlled, deliberate. Giovanni had always been like that. Instantly awake, instantly aware. It was one of the things that had terrified me during our marriage. The way he could shift from sleep to fully conscious in a heartbeat, like a predator sensing threat. "Lauren." My name on his lips sounded wrong after so long. Familiar and foreign all at once. How did you get this number? That doesn't matter. I need your medical history. Right now. Excuse me. I closed my eyes, forced the words out past the panic clawing at my throat. Blood type, genetic conditions, immune disorders, anything that could be relevant. I need it immediately. Why would you possibly need my medical history at? I heard rustling, probably him checking a clock. 2:45 in the morning after 15 months of radio silence. The double doors swung open. Dr. Sullivan appeared. His expression urgent. He pointed to his watch, mouthed the word time. Because our son is in the hospital with a 104-degree fever, I said, and the words felt like bullets leaving a gun. And they think it might be meningitis, and they need to know if there are any genetic factors before they do a spinal tap. The silence that followed was different. Absolute. Like the moment between lightning and thunder when the entire world holds still. What did you just say? We have a son. Each word was deliberate now, chosen carefully, because this was the moment everything changed. His name is Luca. He's 7 months old. And he's sick. I need your medical information now, or they can't treat him properly. 7 months. His voice had gone flat, emotionless in a way that scared me more than anger would have. You've had a child for 7 months and you never told me. Giovanni, I know you're angry, but right now I need. Where are you? Boston General Hospital, but don't move. I'll be there in 3 hours. 3 hours. That's impossible. It's a 4-hour drive and I said 3 hours. Something in his voice made my blood run cold. Not anger. Something colder. More dangerous. Give the phone to the doctor. I looked at Dr. Sullivan, who'd been hovering nearby, clearly hearing every word through the hospital quiet. I handed him the phone with shaking hands. This is Dr. Sullivan. His professional mask slipped into place. Yes, sir. The patient is stable, but we're concerned about bacterial meningitis. We need comprehensive medical history particularly, yes. Blood type AB negative. Any history of IC. And immunodeficiencies. No family history. That's helpful. Yes, we'll prepare for your arrival. He ended the call and handed my phone back. His expression unreadable. AB negative. That's rare. Less than 1% of the population. Your son inherited it from his father. Is that why you needed to know? It could affect treatment protocols and blood product availability if we need transfusions. Dr. Sullivan made a note on his tablet. Mr. Ferrante was very thorough. He also mentioned he's bringing his own medical team. His own team. Dr. Sullivan's gaze sharpened slightly. Ms. Grant, who exactly is your ex-husband? I opened my mouth. Closed it again. How did I explain Giovanni? Successful businessman was technically true, but laughably inadequate. Dangerous man involved in things I'd never fully understood. More accurate, but not something you said to a doctor in a hospital. He's well connected, I finally said. He has resources. Clearly. In the distance I heard it. The low thump of rotor blades cutting through rain and darkness. Helicopter. Of course Giovanni hadn't driven. He'd taken a helicopter. Because when Giovanni Ferrante's son was dying, federal aviation regulations and weather conditions were just minor inconveniences to be overcome with enough money and intimidation. Dr. Sullivan heard it too. In the meantime, we're moving forward with the lumbar puncture. The medical history he provided gives us better parameters to work with. You can see Luca for a few minutes before we begin the procedure. I followed him through a maze of hallways, my wet shoes squeaking on linoleum, and tried to prepare myself for what was coming. Not just the procedure. Not just the possibility that my son might have a life-threatening infection. But the reckoning I'd been avoiding for 7 months. Giovanni was coming. And when he arrived, everything I'd built, every lie I'd told myself about why I'd kept Luca secret, every justification for my choices, would burn to the ground. The only question was whether I'd survive the fire, or whether I'd already planned to start it myself. Chapter 1. The Man Who Never Bleeds. The first thing I noticed when Giovanni Ferrante walked into Boston General Hospital was the silence that followed him. Not literal silence. The emergency room was still full of beeping monitors, crying children, overworked nurses calling out orders. But there was a shift in the air, a tension that spread like ripples in water as he moved through the space. People noticed him. More importantly, people got out of his way. He wore a black suit despite the hour, perfectly tailored, not a thread out of place even though he'd just stepped out of a helicopter in a rainstorm. His dark hair was wet, pushed back from his face in a way that highlighted the sharp line of his jaw, the scar bisecting his left eyebrow that I'd once traced with my fingers in the dark. Behind him came 3 other men, also in suits, moving with the same predatory grace. One of them carried a medical bag, the private doctors he'd mentioned. His eyes found mine across the crowded emergency room. The world contracted to just that moment, that look. I saw fury there, barely contained beneath the surface of his control. But underneath it something else. Something raw and terrifying and so unlike the Giovanni I'd known during our marriage that I almost didn't recognize it. Fear. He crossed the distance between us in seconds. I'd forgotten how tall he was. How his presence could fill a space and make everything else feel small and insignificant. Where is he? His voice was quiet, controlled, but I heard the violence underneath. The barely leashed rage of a man who'd just discovered he had a son and that son was dying. They're doing the lumbar puncture. We have to wait. Show me where. Giovanni, they won't let you back there. They have protocols. I don't care about their protocols. He stepped closer and I caught his scent. Cedar and something darker, dangerous. That's my son. And I'm not waiting in a room with outdated magazines while he's going through a medical procedure alone. He's not alone. He has nurses and doctors. He doesn't have his parents. Giovanni's voice dropped to something that made my spine straighten instinctively. 15 months, Lauren. You kept my son from me for 15 months. You said you didn't want children. I said children were dangerous in my world. I never said I didn't want them. I said I couldn't afford to have them because people would use them to get to me. He stepped even closer, and I could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes that I'd once found mesmerizing. And you proved me right by running away the second you found out you were pregnant. That's not fair. You never let me in. You never told me anything real about your life. How was I supposed to? Ms. Grant. Dr. Sullivan appeared, looking between Giovanni and me with obvious concern. Mr. Ferrante, I presume? Giovanni's mask snapped back into place instantly. Fury replaced by cold corporate control. Where is my son? The procedure is complete. We're running cultures now, but I can take you to see him. Both of you. We followed Dr. Sullivan through the hospital in tense silence. Giovanni's presence beside me like a storm barely contained. When we reached Luca's room, Giovanni stopped in the doorway. His entire body went still. I saw what he saw. Our son, small and vulnerable, hooked up to machines and monitors, fighting an invisible enemy. Luca had Giovanni's dark hair, his nose, the shape of his mouth. Looking at them in the same room left no doubt about paternity. Giovanni moved forward slowly, like approaching something precious and breakable. He stood beside the crib, one hand gripping the rail so tight his knuckles went white. "Hello, Luca," he said softly, and his voice cracked on our son's name. "I'm your father, and I'm never leaving you again." I watched something fundamental shift in Giovanni's expression as he looked at Luca. The careful control he'd maintained since walking into the hospital began to fracture, revealing something underneath I'd never seen during our marriage. Vulnerability, love, terror. One of the private doctors Giovanni had brought stepped forward, a silver-haired man with a European accent. "Mr. Ferrante, if I may examine the child." Dr. Sullivan stiffened. "I'm the attending physician here. We have protocols." "Dr. Sullivan." Giovanni didn't raise his voice, but the doctor stopped mid-sentence. "This is Dr. Marcus Chen, one of the finest pediatric specialists in the country. He's flown in from New York to provide a second opinion. You'll work together or you'll step aside. The choice is yours. I saw Dr. Sullivan's jaw tighten, saw him weigh his options and realize he had none. Not against whatever power Giovanni represented. Of course, Dr. Sullivan said tightly. I'll coordinate with your team. As the doctors conferred over Luca's medical chart, speaking in rapid medical terminology I only half understood, Giovanni turned to me. How long has he been sick? He was fussy yesterday. Fever started around 6 p.m. I gave him acetaminophen but it didn't work. My voice sounded distant, clinical, like I was reporting on someone else's child. By midnight it was 103. By 2 a.m. it was over 104 and he was barely responsive. And you waited until 2:30 to call me. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I didn't wait, I said, anger finally cutting through the numbness. I called the pediatrician. I took him to the hospital. I did everything a mother is supposed to do when her child is sick. Except tell his father. I didn't have your number. I had to call my attorney to get it. I had to grovel for information I deleted 15 months ago because keeping it felt like keeping you. And I was so goddamn determined to be free of you that My voice broke. Giovanni's hand caught my elbow, steady and warm. Sit down before you fall down. I wanted to argue but my legs were shaking. I let him guide me to the chair beside Luca's crib, watched him crouch down so we were eye level. Listen to me very carefully, he said. His voice low enough that only I could hear. I'm angry. Furious, actually, in ways I'm not sure I have words for. But right now, the only thing that matters is Luca. We're going to make sure he survives this. And then... His jaw clenched. Then we're going to have a very long conversation about decisions you made without me. You made decisions without me for our entire marriage, I shot back. You shut me out of every part of your real life. What gave you the right to? Mr. Ferrante. Dr. Chen approached, his expression grave. We need to discuss the treatment plan. Giovanni stood, but his hand lingered on my shoulder for a moment. A silent command to stay put. I watched him move away, switching instantly into business mode. Listening to medical jargon, asking pointed questions that proved he'd researched meningitis in the 3 hours it took him to get here. Making decisions about our son's care with an authority that should have enraged me but instead felt like relief. Because for 7 months, every decision had been mine alone. Every doctor's appointment, every late-night fever, every developmental milestone, all of it had rested entirely on my shoulders. And I told myself I preferred it that way. Told myself that doing it alone meant I was strong, independent, free. I'd been lying. The truth was I'd been drowning. And I'd been too proud to admit it. The cultures will take 24 to 48 hours, Dr. Chen was saying. But we're starting broad-spectrum antibiotics immediately. For fluids to manage the fever. The preliminary lumbar puncture results suggest bacterial meningitis, which means, how long until we know if there's permanent damage? Giovanni interrupted. Dr. Chen hesitated. It's too early to say. But the fact that you got him here quickly, that we've started treatment within hours of symptom escalation, those are positive factors. Positive factors, Giovanni repeated flatly. Not guarantees. In medicine, Mr. Ferrante, very little is guaranteed. Giovanni's hand moved to his pocket, pulled out his phone. He typed something quickly, one-handed, then looked at Dr. Sullivan. I'm having a suite prepared at Children's Hospital in Manhattan. As soon as Luca is stable for transport, we're moving him there. That's not necessary, Dr. Sullivan started. It's not a request. Giovanni's tone left no room for argument. My son will receive treatment at the best pediatric facility in the country. Your hospital has excellent trauma protocols, doctor, but ongoing care for a case like this? We both know where he needs to be. Dr. Sullivan's face flushed, but he nodded stiffly. I'll prepare the transfer paperwork. After the doctors left, Giovanni returned to Luca's crib. He stood there for a long moment just watching our son breathe. "I missed everything," he said quietly. His birth. His first smile. The first time he rolled over, sat up, laughed. All of it. Guilt twisted in my chest like a knife. "Giovanni." "No." He held up a hand without turning around. "Don't apologize yet. Don't explain. I'm not ready to hear it without saying things I'll regret." So I stayed silent, watching him watch Luca, and wondered if there was any explanation that would make this right. Any justification that would erase the fact that I'd stolen 7 months of his son's life from him. The answer I already knew was no. But what Giovanni didn't know, what I was counting on him not realizing until it was too late, was that I'd planned for this moment. Not the meningitis, not the emergency, but the eventual confrontation. The inevitable reckoning when Giovanni discovered his son. I'd spent 7 months building a life in Boston, yes. But I'd also spent 7 months gathering information. Learning everything I could about Giovanni's business operations. His associates, his enemies. Creating detailed documentation of every questionable transaction, every suspicious shipment, every connection to the criminal enterprises I'd turned a blind eye to during our marriage. I told myself it was insurance. Protection in case Giovanni ever tried to take Luca from me. But sitting in this hospital room, watching him look at our son with such raw devotion, I realized the truth was darker. I'd been preparing for war. And war, I was learning, required sacrifice. The question was whether I was willing to sacrifice the man I'd once loved, still loved if I was honest with myself, to protect my son. Or whether I was willing to destroy Giovanni to protect myself. A nurse entered to check Luca's vitals, breaking the heavy silence. Giovanni stepped back, gave her space to work, then moved to stand beside me. "When he's stable," Giovanni said, his voice carefully neutral, "you're both coming to New York." Giovanni. Not a request, Lauren. Not a negotiation. He finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that made my pulse quicken. "You kept him from me for 7 months. I'm not losing another day. Not another hour if I can help it. I have a job, a life here. Then pack it up and bring it with you. Or leave it behind. I don't particularly care which." His jaw tightened. "But Luca will have the best medical care available. He'll grow up knowing his father. And you." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "You're going to explain to me exactly why you thought keeping my son a secret was a good idea. And then you're going to spend however long it takes earning back the trust you destroyed." I should have been angry. Should have stood up and told him he couldn't dictate my life. Couldn't make demands after shutting me out for 2 years of marriage. But I wasn't angry. I was calculating. Because Giovanni was giving me exactly what I needed. Proximity, access, opportunity. He was inviting me back into his world, back into his orbit, where I could finish what I'd started 7 months ago. He was making it easy. "Okay," I said softly, and watched surprise flicker across his face. He'd expected a fight. "We'll come to New York. For Luca's sake." "For Luca's sake," he repeated, studying me with those dark, perceptive eyes that missed nothing. "Why do I feel like you're agreeing too easily? Maybe because you're used to me fighting you." I held his gaze. "Maybe I've learned when to pick my battles. Or maybe you're planning something." His hand came up, caught my chin, tilted my face toward his. "I know you, Lauren. Know when you're hiding something. And right now, you're hiding something." My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my expression calm. "The only thing I'm hiding is how terrified I am that our son might die. Everything else feels pretty insignificant in comparison." It was true. And the truth I'd learned made the best lies. Giovanni studied me for another long moment, then released me. "We'll continue this conversation in New York. After Luca is stable. After we both get some sleep." "Sleep," I repeated. "When was the last time you slept?" 26 hours ago. "You. Longer than that." He almost smiled. "Almost. Then we're both running on fumes and adrenaline." Not the best state for making decisions or having difficult conversations. One of his men appeared in the doorway, the one I'd mentally labeled the lieutenant, based on how the others deferred to him. Tall, scarred, with cold eyes that had seen too much violence. "Sir," he said quietly, "we've secured the floor. No one gets in or out without our clearance." Giovanni nodded. "Good. Maintain a perimeter. I want eyes on every entrance, every exit. And I want to know who comes and goes from this room." "Already done. The doctor, Sullivan, he's been flagged. Background check is running now. And the nurses. All cleared. Boston General has good security protocols. We've integrated with their system." I stared at Giovanni. "You've taken over hospital security." "I've supplemented it," he corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" His expression hardened. "The moment you called me Lauren, you made Luca visible. You made him a target. Everyone in my world now knows I have a son. Which means everyone who wants to hurt me, control me, or use me will be calculating how to get to him." He moved closer, his voice dropping. "So yes, I've taken over security. And I'll continue taking over whatever I need to take over to keep him safe. If that makes you uncomfortable, you should have thought about that before you dialed my number." The accusation stung because it was fair. I had made Luca visible, had opened the door to Giovanni's world. And I'd done it knowing exactly what that meant. What Giovanni didn't know was that I'd been planning for this contingency for months. That I had my own contacts, my own resources, my own plans for keeping Luca safe that had nothing to do with Giovanni's criminal empire and everything to do with dismantling it. "I need coffee," I said, standing. "And food. I haven't eaten since yesterday." "Matteo will take you to the cafeteria," Giovanni said, gesturing to the lieutenant. "Stay with her. Don't let her out of your sight. I don't need a babysitter. You need protection." Giovanni's tone left no room for argument. "The same people who might target Luca could target you. You're the mother of my child. That makes you valuable. That makes you vulnerable." I wanted to argue. Wanted to throw his protection back in his face and walk out of this hospital and never look back. But Luca made a small sound from his crib, and Giovanni's attention immediately shifted to him. The hardness in his expression melted into something softer, more human. And I realized that fighting Giovanni right now would be pointless. Better to let him think he was in control. Better to let him believe I was cooperating out of fear or necessity or maternal instinct. Better to hide my real intentions until I was ready to strike. "Fine," I said. "Matteo can play bodyguard. But I'm walking myself to the cafeteria." Giovanni nodded without looking away from Luca. Already dismissing me. Already focused entirely on our son. Should have hurt. Instead, it gave me the opening I needed. I followed Matteo out of the room, through the hospital corridors, feeling his presence 3 steps behind me like a shadow I couldn't shake. In the cafeteria, I bought coffee I didn't want and a sandwich I couldn't taste. And while Matteo's attention was on his phone, probably coordinating security protocols, I pulled out my own phone and typed a quick message to a number I'd memorized months ago but never used. "He knows about Luca. We're moving to New York. Be ready." I deleted the message immediately after sending it, cleared my call log and slipped the phone back into my pocket. When Matteo looked up, I was sipping coffee and staring at nothing, looking like a terrified mother who'd just learned her son might have meningitis. Not like a woman who'd just activated the first phase of a plan that would either save Giovanni Ferrante or destroy him completely. The choice, I'd already decided, would be his to make. But he wouldn't realize he was making it until it was far too late. Chapter 2. The gilded cage reopened. Luca stabilized after 72 hours. The bacterial meningitis diagnosis was confirmed, but we'd caught it early enough that the doctors were cautiously optimistic about a full recovery. No brain damage. No hearing loss. No lasting effects beyond a prolonged course of 4 antibiotics and monitoring. Giovanni didn't leave the hospital once during those 3 days. He slept in the chair beside Luca's crib, when he slept at all. Mostly he worked from his phone and laptop, managing his empire from a pediatric ward in Boston while his son fought an infection that could have killed him. I watched him negotiate shipping contracts in Italian, authorize seven-figure transactions with a few terse emails, and coordinate security protocols for businesses I'd never known existed during our marriage. He was letting me see it all now. The real Giovanni Ferrante, not the carefully curated version he'd shown me before. I couldn't decide if it was a gesture of trust or a warning. On the fourth day, Dr. Sullivan approved the transfer to Children's Hospital in Manhattan. Giovanni had already arranged everything: private medical transport, a suite in the pediatric ICU, a team of specialists who'd been on standby since the moment Luca was admitted. "You don't have to do this," I said as we prepared to leave. "Boston General is perfectly capable of." "Lauren." Giovanni didn't look up from fastening Luca's medical equipment for transport. Our son was sleeping, finally. His fever broken and his color returning to normal. "We're not having this argument again. Luca receives the best care available. That care is in New York. Therefore, we're going to New York. And what about what I want?" Now he looked at me. His dark eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep. His jaw shadowed with 4 days of stubble, but his gaze was sharp as ever. "What you want is for our son to survive and thrive. Everything else is negotiable." He was right, damn him. And we both knew it. The medical transport was a helicopter. Of course it was. Giovanni had arranged for it to land on the hospital's rooftop helipad. As we rode the elevator up, surrounded by doctors and medical equipment and Giovanni's ever-present security team, I felt the life I'd built in Boston slipping away like sand through my fingers. Jessica had called 17 times in the past 3 days. I'd texted her brief updates but hadn't actually spoken to her. What would I say? "Sorry, I'm moving back to New York with my ex-husband because our secret son almost died and now I'm trapped in the very world I spent 15 months escaping." The truth, as always, was too complicated. The flight to New York took 35 minutes. I sat beside Luca's medical bassinet, holding his small hand while Giovanni coordinated with the hospital on the ground. Manhattan appeared through the helicopter window like a promise and a threat, gleaming towers and endless possibility, built on foundations of money and violence and moral compromise. This was Giovanni's kingdom, and I was about to become a permanent resident again. Children's Hospital Manhattan was everything Giovanni had promised. State-of-the-art facilities, world-class doctors, a private suite that looked more like a luxury hotel room than a pediatric ward. Luca was admitted immediately, transferred to a regular room now that his condition was stable, surrounded by monitors that would alert us to the slightest change. "The apartment is ready," Giovanni said that evening. We were alone in Luca's room, our son sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. Upper East Side. 3 bedrooms, full security, close to the hospital. "You can move in tomorrow." "Apartment," I repeated. "You bought me an apartment." "I bought our son a home. You're his mother. Therefore you live there too." He pulled out a folder from his bag. The man traveled with legal documents even during medical emergencies. "Lease is in your name. You have full control. I'm listed as an authorized resident for security purposes, but you make all the decisions." I stared at the papers he was offering. This was the Giovanni I remembered from business negotiations during our marriage. Calm, prepared, always 3 steps ahead. "What if I don't want to live in an apartment you chose? Then choose a different one. I'll have my real estate team send you options tomorrow." He set the folder on the table beside me. "The only non-negotiable is security. Wherever you and Luca live needs to meet minimum safety standards." "You mean it needs to be a fortress?" "I mean it needs to keep my son alive." His voice was flat, final. "Everything else is preference." I picked up the folder, flipped through it. The apartment was beautiful. Of course it was. Hardwood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows with park views. A nursery that had already been furnished with everything a baby could need. Giovanni had thought of everything. Except asking me, "When do I start work?" Asked, changing tactics. "Work? You said you needed legal consultants. Corporate law, compliance, contracts. That was the arrangement, wasn't it?" I work for you, you provide for Luca, we co-parent in proximity. I met his gaze. Or was that just something you said to get me to agree? Something flickered in Giovanni's expression. Surprise, maybe, that I was holding him to the deal. You want to work. Now. I want to not be dependent on you. I want to maintain my career. I chose my words carefully. I want to be useful. I can't just sit in an apartment all day while you make every decision. That's not sustainable. You'll be taking care of Luca. Luca sleeps 16 hours a day. I need something else, Giovanni. Something that's mine. He studied me for a long moment, and I could see him calculating, trying to figure out my angle. Giovanni never took anything at face value. Always looking for the hidden motive, the secret agenda. If only he knew. Fine, he said finally. I'll have HR send you paperwork tomorrow. You'll report to my general counsel, Marcus Rossi. You met him briefly during the divorce. He'll assign you cases, mostly contract review and compliance work for the import businesses. Nothing that will require travel initially, given Luca's condition. Thank you. Don't thank me. You're doing me a favor. My current legal team is competent but expensive, and most of them are too afraid of me to tell me when I'm making a mistake. He almost smiled. You never had that problem. Because you made it clear early on that my opinion didn't matter in the areas that actually counted. The almost smile disappeared. That wasn't. He stopped, rubbed his face with both hands. I'm not doing this right now. I'm too tired, and you're too angry. And Luca needs both his parents to not be at each other's throats. He was right again. Damn him. I'm going back to Boston tomorrow, I said. I need to pack up the apartment, terminate my lease, handle things properly. I'll need a few days. Matteo will go with you. I don't need. You do. Giovanni's voice hardened. The moment I showed up at that hospital in Boston, I made Luca visible. I made you visible. You think the people in my world don't know how to find you? Don't know that the fastest way to hurt me is through my family? He moved closer, and I saw genuine fear beneath his anger. I've already received 3 threats, Lauren. 3 in 4 days. Messages making it very clear that they know I have a son, they know where you've been living, and they know exactly how vulnerable you are. I spread through my chest. What kind of threats? The kind I'm not going to repeat because you're already scared enough. He pulled out his phone, showed me a text message. The number was blocked, but the message was clear enough. Beautiful baby boy. Would be a shame if something happened to him. Attached was a photo of Luca in his stroller outside my apartment building in Boston. They'd been watching us. For how long? When was this taken? My voice barely worked. 2 weeks ago, based on what he's wearing. I had my people pull security footage from your building. They've been surveilling you for at least a month, probably longer. Giovanni's jaw was tight. So no, you don't get to go to Boston alone. You don't get to walk around unprotected anymore. You don't get to pretend that keeping Luca secret kept him safe, because it didn't. It just meant I couldn't protect him. The accusation landed like a physical blow. He was right. I'd thought I was keeping Luca safe by hiding him from Giovanni's world. But Giovanni's enemies had found him anyway. Had been watching him, photographing him, waiting for the right moment to use him as leverage. And I'd had no idea. I'm sorry, I whispered. Sorry doesn't help me. Giovanni took his phone back, deleted the message with sharp, angry movements. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that for 7 months, my son was vulnerable and I didn't know he existed. Sorry doesn't. He stopped, turned away. I need air. Stay with Luca. Don't leave this room without security. He was gone before I could respond, the door closing behind him with controlled force. I sank into the chair beside Luca's crib, staring at my son's peaceful face, and tried not to think about the photo. About strangers watching him, following us, planning God knows. I'd been so focused on protecting Luca from Giovanni that I'd failed to protect him from Giovanni's world. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so terrifying. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Transfer complete. Phase 1 initiated. Awaiting further instructions. I read it twice, then deleted it immediately. Cleared my call history, checked my encryption settings, made sure there was no trace. The message was from Agent Thomas Reed. BI. Organized Crime Division. I'd reached out to him 6 months ago, shortly after Luca was born, when the reality of single motherhood and financial strain had made me desperate enough to consider options I'd never have entertained before. Reed wanted Giovanni. Wanted to dismantle the Ferrante organization and everyone connected to it. And he'd made me an offer that was part immunity deal, part revenge fantasy. Help us build a case against your ex-husband, and we'll protect you. Give us evidence, testimony, access, and we'll make sure you and your son never have to worry about his world again. Said yes. Not because I wanted to destroy Giovanni, or at least that's what I'd told myself, but because I needed insurance. Needed a way to protect Luca if Giovanni ever discovered him and tried to take him away. Now, sitting in this hospital room, watching my son sleep while Giovanni coordinated security to protect us from threats I'd never imagined, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Reed wanted me to gather evidence, document Giovanni's business dealings, record conversations, photograph documents, build an airtight case that would put Giovanni in federal prison for the rest of his life. And I'd agreed to do it. Because 6 months ago, when I was alone and terrified and convinced that Giovanni represented everything dangerous in the world, it had seemed like the right choice. Now I wasn't sure anymore. The door opened. Giovanni's lieutenant, Matteo, stepped inside. His expression carefully neutral. "Mrs. Ferrante," he said, and I didn't correct him about the name. "Mr. Ferrante asked me to inform you that he's arranged for your belongings to be packed and shipped from Boston. You won't need to return." "I want to return," I said. "I need to handle things myself." "That's not possible." "Why not?" Matteo's expression didn't change. "Because Mr. Ferrante has determined that the risk is too high. Your apartment in Boston is compromised. The people watching you know your routines, your vulnerabilities. Returning would be dangerous. So I'm just not allowed to go back. To get my own things, close out my own life. Your life is here now. With your son. With your family." He said it like it was simple. Like my autonomy was a small price to pay for security. "The apartment on the Upper East Side is ready. You can move in tomorrow. Everything you need has already been provided." I stood up, anger cutting through the exhaustion and fear. "Where is Giovanni?" "Managing a situation." "What situation?" "That's not my information to share, Mrs. Ferrante." I wanted to scream. Wanted to throw something. Wanted to grab Luca and run as far and fast as I could from this life Giovanni was reconstructing around me. But Luca was sick. And I was tired. And Giovanni was right about the threats being real. So instead I sat back down. "Fine," I said. "I'll move into the apartment tomorrow. But I'm working. I'm not going to sit around being protected and provided for like a doll in a dollhouse. Mr. Ferrante mentioned you'd be starting with the legal department next week. Once Luca is discharged." "Tomorrow," I corrected. "I'll work from home until Luca is discharged. But I'm starting tomorrow." Matteo almost smiled. "Almost. I'll let Mr. Ferrante know." After he left, I pulled out my phone again. Typed a message to Jessica. "Moving to New York. Luca is stable. Long story. I'll explain when I can." "Okay. We're okay." Her response came immediately. "You're not okay. Call me." I stared at the message, then turned my phone off completely. Jessica would want explanations I couldn't give. Would ask questions I couldn't answer honestly. Would see through the lies I was trying to build. Better to go silent for a while. Let her worry, let her assume the worst, let her think I was trapped. 'Cause I was trapped. Just not in the way she'd imagine. The cage Giovanni was building around me was beautiful. Luxury apartment, meaningful work, round-the-clock security, everything money could buy. But it was still a cage. The question was whether I was the prisoner, or whether Giovanni was. Because I'd learned something during our marriage that I'd never forgotten. Giovanni was brilliant at building empires, at controlling territory, at managing threats from enemies he could see. But he'd always been blind to threats from people he loved, people he trusted, people like me. I looked at Luca, sleeping peacefully, unaware that his mother was planning to either save his father or destroy him completely. I'm sorry, I thought, for all of this. For every choice I've made and every choice I'm about to make. But I didn't stop planning. Didn't stop calculating. Didn't stop moving the pieces into position for a game Giovanni didn't even know we were playing yet. The door opened again. Giovanni this time, looking more exhausted than before. Situation handled. Yes. For now. He moved to Luca's crib, checked the monitors with practiced efficiency. The apartment is ready. We'll move you tomorrow morning. Matteo will handle security. I'll be there to help you settle in. You don't have to. I want to. He looked at me finally, and I saw something in his expression that made my breath catch. Something raw and unguarded. I missed 7 months, Lauren. I'm not missing anything else. Not his first word, not his first step, not any of it. Which means being present, being there. Even for the mundane shit like moving into an apartment and buying groceries and figuring out which brand of diapers works best. Giovanni, I know you're angry. I know you think I'm controlling your life. And maybe I am. He moved closer, his voice dropping. But I'm also trying to keep you both alive. Those threats aren't hypothetical. The people who want to hurt me through Luca are real, and they're patient, and they're very good at what they do. So what do? Live in fear forever? No. We eliminate the threats. His expression hardened. One by one, systematically, until there's no one left who thinks touching my family is an option. The casual way he said it, eliminate the threats, should have terrified me. Instead, it reminded me exactly who Giovanni Ferrante was. Not the devoted father watching our son sleep. Not the exhausted man running an empire from a hospital room. But the dangerous, ruthless criminal who'd built that empire on violence and fear and carefully calculated cruelty. The man I was planning to destroy. The man I was starting to realize might destroy me first if I wasn't careful. Get some sleep, Giovanni said, misreading my expression. You look like you're about to collapse. I'm fine. You're not. But you're stubborn, so I'm not going to argue. He pulled out his phone. I'm having food sent up. Real food, not hospital cafeteria garbage. You'll eat, and then you'll sleep. And tomorrow we'll move you to the apartment and start figuring out what our life looks like now. Our life, I repeated. Co-parenting. Living in proximity. Building something stable for Luca. He paused. Unless you have a different vision for how this works. I could have told him the truth then. Could have admitted that my vision involved federal agents and testimony and watching him pay for every crime he'd ever committed. But I didn't. No, I said instead. Your vision sounds fine. The lie tasted like ashes. But I was getting good at swallowing them. Chapter 3. Lessons in Obedience. The apartment was everything Giovanni had promised and nothing I wanted. 14 floors up, the Upper East Side stretched below us like a kingdom made of glass and steel. The living room alone was larger than my entire Boston apartment. Marble countertops in the kitchen, heated floors in the bathrooms, a nursery decorated in soft grays and whites with a crib that probably cost more than my first car. The security system is state-of-the-art, Giovanni explained, walking me through each room while Matteo's team finished bringing up boxes from the moving truck. Panic buttons in every room, cameras on all entry points, reinforced doors and windows. The building itself has 24-hour concierge and private security, but my people supplement that. Your people, I repeated, watching 2 men in dark suits position themselves by the windows, checking sight lines and potential vulnerabilities. Protection, not surveillance, Giovanni clarified, though we both knew the distinction was meaningless. They're here to keep you safe, not to monitor your movements. And if I want to leave, take Luca for a walk in the park. You tell them first. They accompany you. They maintain a perimeter. He moved to the nursery window, looked out at Central Park spreading green and vast below us. I know it feels restrictive, but it's necessary. Luca gurgled from the portable bassinet we'd brought from the hospital. 8 months old now, recovered enough to be discharged but still requiring careful monitoring. Giovanni had arranged for a pediatric nurse to visit daily, just to be safe. I lifted Luca, felt his warm weight against my chest, and tried not to think about the cameras watching us. The security team in the hallway. The invisible walls Giovanni was building around us that looked like protection but felt like prison. When do I start work? Asked. Monday. Marcus will send over your first assignments this weekend. Contract reviews mostly. Nothing urgent. Giovanni checked his watch. I have a meeting in an hour. Will you be okay here? We'll be fine. He hesitated like he wanted to say something else, then just nodded. Call me if you need anything. Matteo stays on this floor. He won't enter the apartment without permission, but he's there if there's an emergency. After Giovanni left, I spent the afternoon unpacking boxes and pretending normalcy. Hung pictures I'd brought from Boston. Luca's ultrasound, a photo of Jessica and me from law school, my parents' wedding portrait. Small pieces of a life that felt very far away now. My phone rang. Jessica for the 5th time today. I answered before I could change my mind. Jesus Christ, Lauren, finally. Her voice cracked with relief and anger. You've been ghosting me for a week. A week. I was about to file a missing person report. I'm sorry. Everything happened so fast. Luca was sick, you moved to New York, you're living with your psychotic ex-husband. I got the highlights from your texts. What I don't get is why you're acting like this is normal. You pause. Or are you not allowed to talk freely? Should I be worried? I can talk freely, I said, moving to the window where I could see the park below. And Giovanni isn't. It's complicated. It's always complicated with him. That was the problem. Jessica's voice softened. Lauren, I'm your best friend. I've known you since we were 22 years old. And I can hear it in your voice. You're scared. I'm not scared. You're terrified. And you're lying about it, which means it's bad. I closed my eyes, pressed my forehead against the cool glass. Luca had bacterial meningitis. He almost died. Giovanni came, and he brought doctors and resources, and he saved our son's life. Now he's providing security because apparently there are people who want to hurt Luca to get to him. What was I supposed to do? Say no thank you and go back to my shitty apartment where criminals were already surveilling us? You were being surveilled. I told her about the photo. Text message. The threats Giovanni had received. Jessica was silent for a long moment. Okay. That's terrifying. So you understand why I'm here. I understand why you felt you had no choice. That's different from thinking this is a good idea. You pause. What's your exit strategy? Exit strategy. For when you need to leave again. Because you will need to leave, Lauren. Men like Giovanni don't change. They just get better at hiding who they really are. I thought about the message from Agent Reed. The plan we'd been coordinating for months. The evidence I was supposed to gather. I'm working on it, I said finally. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. After we hung up, I sat in the pristine living room of my gilded cage and tried to remember why I'd agreed to this. Not just moving to New York. I understood that necessity. But agreeing to work for Giovanni. Accepting his money, his protection, his presence in my life. The answer I knew was complex. Partly it was practical. I needed Giovanni's resources to keep Luca safe. Partly it was strategic. Working for him gave me access to his businesses, his operations, his secrets. But partly, and this was the part one couldn't admit to Jessica or Agent Reed or even myself most days, it was because some broken, self-destructive part of me still loved him. Still remembered the early days of our marriage, before the walls went up. When Giovanni would come home late and wake me with kisses, would tell me about his day in vague terms that made me feel included, would make love to me like I was the only thing that mattered in his world. I thought I was special then. Thought I'd be the one to break through his defenses, to make him vulnerable, to build something real. I'd been so fucking naive. The intercom buzzed. Matteo's voice came through. "Mrs. Ferrante, there's a delivery." "What kind of delivery?" "Documents from the legal department. And flowers." "Flowers. Send them up." A moment later there was a knock at the door. I checked the camera, another of Giovanni's security measures, and saw one of the building staff holding a large box and an enormous bouquet of white roses. I opened the door, took the delivery, tipped generously even though I knew Giovanni probably paid the building staff obscene amounts to ensure loyalty. The flowers had a card. "For new beginnings." I stared at the perfect white roses, their thorns carefully removed, and tried to decide if this was genuine or performative. Giovanni had never been one for romantic gestures during our marriage. Gifts, yes, expensive jewelry I never wore, designer clothes I didn't need, things that looked good but meant nothing. But flowers with handwritten cards. That was new. The document box contained my first work assignments. Contract reviews for 3 shipping companies, compliance audits for 2 import businesses, legal assessment of a real estate acquisition in Queens. All perfectly legitimate businesses on the surface. But I'd been married to Giovanni long enough to recognize the patterns. Import companies that moved slightly more cargo than their official manifests indicated. Shipping routes that made unnecessary stops in jurisdictions with lax oversight. Real estate acquisitions in neighborhoods where cash businesses flourished and questions weren't asked. This was Giovanni's empire. Legal enough to avoid prosecution, dirty enough to generate the kind of wealth that bought helicopters and penthouses and private medical teams. And he was giving me access to all of it. Either he trusted me completely, or he was testing me. I spent the weekend reviewing contracts, making notes, identifying discrepancies that any competent lawyer would flag. Building a paper trail that proved I was doing legitimate legal work, not gathering evidence for a federal investigation. But I was also photographing everything. Using the encrypted phone Agent Reed had provided, documenting shipping routes and cargo manifests and financial transactions that didn't quite add up. Building a case, brick by brick, that would eventually bring down the entire Ferrante organization. Monday morning, Giovanni appeared at my door at 7 a.m. with coffee and breakfast from a cafe I'd mentioned liking during our marriage. "You remembered," I said, taking the coffee. "I remember everything about you." He stepped inside, set the bag of pastries on the counter. "Marcus is expecting your analysis of the shipping contracts by Wednesday. Take your time, be thorough. He values accuracy over speed." "I've already finished the first 2. Giovanni's eyebrows rose. "It's Monday morning. I worked over the weekend. Luca sleeps a lot, and I needed something to do besides stare at these walls." He studied me for a moment, that calculating look I'd never learned to read. And your shipping companies are routing cargo through countries with beneficial tax treaties and minimal customs oversight, which is legal if aggressive. But there are some timing discrepancies between when cargo leaves point A and arrives at point B that might raise questions during an audit. "What kind of questions?" I pulled out my notes, showed him the highlighted sections. "These routes should take 14 days, but they're consistently taking 18 to 20, which suggests either your ships are making unscheduled stops, or they're slower than specifications indicate. Either way, it creates liability." Giovanni read through my notes, his expression unreadable. "Recommendations. Either adjust your official routes to reflect the actual journey times, or figure out why there's a 4 to 6 day delay and address it. Pause. Or accept that any aggressive audit will find this pattern and have an explanation ready. Such as weather delays, port congestion, mechanical issues. All plausible, all difficult to disprove." I held his gaze. "But if you're making unscheduled stops to move cargo that's not on the manifest, you should probably stop doing that." The silence stretched between us, dangerous and charged. And if I told you that's exactly what we're doing? Giovanni asked quietly. Then I'd tell you that I'm your legal consultant, not your moral compass. My job is to identify legal risk, not to judge your business decisions. I set down my coffee. But I'd also tell you that every unscheduled stop is a vulnerability. Every undocumented cargo movement is evidence. And if someone wanted to build a case against you, this would be exactly where they'd start. Giovanni smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Interesting. What is? That you're assuming someone is trying to build a case against me. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my expression neutral. You're a wealthy businessman with import companies and real estate holdings. Of course someone is trying to build a case against you. The IRS if nothing else. It's not paranoia, Giovanni. It's reality. He moved closer and I forced myself not to step back. And if it wasn't just the IRS, if it was, say, federal law enforcement, what would you recommend then? I'd recommend you get a criminal defense attorney, not a corporate consultant. I met his gaze. Is there something you want to tell me? No. He stepped back, the moment breaking. Just making sure you understand the landscape you're working in. This isn't a normal corporate law position, Lauren. The businesses are legitimate, but the world around them isn't always clean. You'll see things, hear things that exist in gray areas. I need to know you can handle that. I was married to you for 2 years. I can handle gray areas. Marriage is different from complicity. Is it? Challenged. Because I seem to remember a lot of expensive dinners where I smiled at your business associates and pretended not to notice their bodyguards or their cash payments or their discussions about territorial agreements. I was already complicit, Giovanni. This just makes it official. Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe, or respect. Wednesday for the analysis, he said finally. And Lauren, be honest in your assessments. I'm not paying you to tell me what I want to hear. I'm paying you to keep me out of prison. After he left, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the white roses he'd sent, and tried to steady my breathing. That had been a test. Giovanni probing to see how I'd react to the reality of his businesses, whether I'd balk or moralize or threaten to leave. I'd passed. But I'd also learned something crucial. Giovanni suspected something. Maybe not the FBI specifically, maybe not me personally. But he knew someone was watching, building a case, waiting for him to make a mistake. Which meant I had to be more careful. I pulled out the encrypted phone, typed a message to Agent Reed. He's suspicious. Cautious. Will send documentation when safe. The response came immediately. Understood. Remember, you're protected. Immunity agreement is signed. Whatever happens, you and your son are safe. I stared at those words. You and your son are safe. But Reed didn't know Giovanni the way I did. Didn't understand that immunity agreements and federal protection meant nothing to a man who could make people disappear with a phone call. Who had enough money and connections to reach into witness protection if he wanted to. If Giovanni ever discovered what I was doing, no immunity agreement would save me. The only thing that might was the fact that he still loved me. I could see it in the way he looked at Luca, the way he'd shown up at that Boston hospital, the way he brought me coffee from a cafe I'd mentioned once 2 years ago. Giovanni Ferrante was a dangerous, ruthless criminal who'd built an empire on violence and fear. But he was also a man who'd never stopped loving me. And I was going to use that love to destroy him. The question was whether I'd survive the guilt. That evening, Giovanni returned earlier than expected. I was on the floor with Luca, helping him practice pulling himself up on the coffee table, when I heard the key in the lock. You have a key, I said as he entered. Emergency access only. I knocked first. He set down his briefcase, immediately moving to crouch beside Luca. Hey, troublemaker. Working on those legs. Luca squealed with delight, reaching for his father with grabby hands. Giovanni scooped him up, tossed him gently in the air until our son shrieked with laughter. Watching them together hurt in ways I hadn't anticipated. I brought dinner, Giovanni said, settling Luca on his hip. Figured you probably haven't eaten since breakfast. I ate lunch. Hospital crackers don't count as lunch. He moved to the kitchen, started unpacking containers from a bag I hadn't noticed. Italian. From that place in the village you always liked. Giovanni. I know. I'm overstepping. Being too present, too involved. He didn't look at me, focused on plating food. But I meant what I said at the hospital. I missed 7 months. I'm not missing anything else. Even the mundane shit like making sure you eat dinner. I should have told him to leave. Should have established boundaries, maintained distance, reminded him that we were co-parents, not partners. But I was tired. And the food smelled amazing. And watching him with Luca made something in my chest ache with longing for what we could have been if he'd been different, if I'd been stronger, if the world was something other than what it was. Fine, I said. But you're cleaning up. We ate at the dining table, Luca in his high chair between us, while Giovanni told me about his day in vague terms that told me nothing and everything. A meeting with shipping executives. A negotiation over port access. A conversation with his attorney about regulatory compliance. Normal business activities that probably weren't normal at all. Marcus said your analysis was excellent, Giovanni mentioned. Thorough, pragmatic, exactly what he needed. I was honest about the vulnerabilities. I know. That's what made it excellent. He paused. He wants you to look at the real estate holdings next. There's a warehouse acquisition in Brooklyn that needs legal review before we finalize. Warehouse for what? Storage. Distribution. Giovanni's tone was carefully neutral. Legitimate goods, legitimate purposes. But the neighborhood is complicated, and we need to make sure all the permits and licenses are in order. Translation. The neighborhood was controlled by a rival organization, and Giovanni needed to make sure this warehouse wouldn't become a territorial flashpoint. I'll review it this week, I said. After dinner, Giovanni insisted on helping with Luca's bedtime routine. Bath pajamas story time. He was natural with our son in a way that still surprised me. Patient, gentle, completely present. Where did you learn this? I asked as he fastened Luca's sleep sack. YouTube mostly. And books. He picked up Luca, swayed slightly. 17 books on infant development and childcare in the 3 days between the hospital call and seeing him in Boston. I had to learn everything in 72 hours. 17 books. I'm a fast reader when motivated. He looked at me over Luca's head. I wasn't going to show up unprepared to be his father. Something twisted in my chest. Guilt maybe. Or grief for all the time Giovanni had lost. All the firsts I'd stolen from him. I'm sorry, I whispered. For keeping him from you. For all of it. Don't. Giovanni's voice was quiet but firm. Not right now. When I'm ready to have that conversation, when I can have it without saying things I'll regret, we'll talk. But right now I'm just trying to be present for him. Everything else can wait. After Luca was asleep, Giovanni lingered by the nursery door. I should go, he said, but he didn't move. You could stay. The words came out before I could stop them. On the couch, I mean. In case Luca wakes up. He's been restless since the hospital. Giovanni studied me and I saw him calculating again. Trying to figure out my angle, my motivation, what I wanted from him. Okay, he said finally. I'll stay. I gave him pillows and a blanket, tried not to think about how domestic this was. How easy it would be to slip back into old patterns, old habits, old mistakes. But lying in bed later, listening to Giovanni's quiet movements in the living room, I couldn't help remembering the good parts of our marriage. The nights he'd come home late and slide into bed beside me, pulling me against him like I was something precious. The mornings we'd wake up tangled together, neither of us wanting to leave the warmth of shared space. I'd loved him so completely it had nearly destroyed me. Now I was destroying him instead. And the worst part was that I still wasn't sure which of us would survive it. Chapter 4. The Mirror and the Knife. I woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of Giovanni screaming. Not loud. He was too controlled for that even in sleep. but the raw, guttural sound of someone fighting demons in the dark was unmistakable. I was moving before conscious thought caught up, crossing the living room to where he thrashed on the couch, tangled in the blanket I'd given him. His face contorted with something that looked like agony. "Giovanni." I touched his shoulder carefully, ready to pull back if he swung. "Giovanni, wake up." His eyes snapped open, hand catching my wrist in a grip that was just shy of painful. For a second he didn't recognize me, looked at me like I was a threat. His body coiled to strike. Then awareness returned. His grip loosened immediately. "Lauren." His voice was rough, destroyed. "Fuck. Did I wake you? You were having a nightmare." He sat up slowly, ran both hands through his hair. In the dim light from the city filtering through the windows, I could see sweat on his face. His chest heaving with breaths that were almost gasps. "I'm fine," he said automatically. "You're not." I said I'm fine. But his hands were shaking. I'd never seen Giovanni's hands shake. I sat down on the coffee table, facing him. "How often do you have them?" "The nightmares." He laughed, bitter and broken. "Every night for the last 20 years. Welcome to the cost of doing business in my world." "What are they about?" "You don't want to know." "Maybe I do." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something in his expression that made my breath catch. Vulnerability so raw it was almost painful to witness. "They're about all the things I've done," he said quietly. "All the choices I've made that can't be undone. All the people I've hurt." He paused. "And lately, they're about losing you and Luca. About all the ways my world could destroy you both." I should have felt vindicated. Should have used this moment of weakness to press harder, to extract more information, to document his admission of guilt. Instead, I felt my carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. "Giovanni, don't." He stood abruptly, putting distance between us. "Don't sympathize with me. Don't try to fix me. I'm not a good man, Lauren. I've never been a good man. The fact that I love my son doesn't erase the blood on my hands. I know what you are. Do you?" He turned to face me, and in the shadows he looked dangerous again. Like the predator I'd married instead of the father I'd watched put Luca to bed. "Because I don't think you do. I think you know the surface. The legitimate businessman, the concerned father, the ex-husband trying to do better. But underneath," his voice dropped, "underneath is someone who's done things that would make you run screaming if you really understood. Then tell me." I stood too, moved closer. "Tell me the truth for once instead of hiding behind vague warnings and careful omissions." "Why?" "So you can confirm every reason you left me. So you can feel justified in keeping my son from me for 7 months. So I can understand who I'm trusting with my child's life." The words came out sharper than intended. "You keep telling me how dangerous your world is, how necessary all this security is, how vulnerable we are. But you never actually explain what the threat is. What you've done to create these enemies. Why people want to hurt you badly enough to target an infant." Giovanni was silent for a long moment, and I could see him weighing his options. Truth or deflection. Honesty or self-preservation. "Sit down," he said finally. "If you really want to know, sit down. Because once I tell you, you can't unhear it. And you'll have to decide if you can live with what I am." He paced to the window, stared out at the sleeping city, and began to speak. "My father built the Ferrante organization on 3 principles: loyalty, violence, and silence. He controlled shipping routes between Italy and New York for 30 years, moving cargo that ranged from legitimate goods to things that were decidedly not legitimate. When I was 16, he put a gun in my hand and told me to prove I was his son." He paused, and I waited, my heart hammering. "There was a man, I won't tell you his name because it doesn't matter anymore, who'd stolen from us. Taken money, broken trust, thought he could disappear into the night. My father found him, brought him to our warehouse in Red Hook, and told me to pull the trigger." "Did you?" "Not the first time." Giovanni's reflection in the window was perfectly still. I couldn't do it. 16 years old, holding a gun, looking at a man begging for his life. I couldn't pull the trigger. What happened? My father did it instead. Put the gun to the man's head and fired while I stood there watching. Then he told me that mercy was weakness in our world. That the moment I showed compassion, I'd be the one on his knees begging. Giovanni turned to face me. 2 weeks later he gave me another test. Another thief. Another gun. And that time I pulled the trigger. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the city below, the distant sound of traffic. I was 16, Giovanni continued, his voice hollow. And I became a killer because my father needed to know I could be trusted with the family business. That's who I am, Lauren. That's the foundation everything else is built on. I should have been horrified. Should have stood up, grabbed Luca, and run as far from this man as possible. But I'd known, hadn't I? Known on some level that the wealth and power and control came from violence. That the legitimate businesses were fronts for something darker. How many? Yes. Total. People I've killed personally. 3 including that first one. People I've ordered killed. He shook his head. I stopped counting after 20. Maybe 30 now. Maybe more. And you don't regret it. Some of them. Not all. He moved closer, and I forced myself not to flinch. The ones who threatened my family. The ones who broke trust, endangered innocent people, made themselves threats that couldn't be negotiated with. No, I don't regret those. What about the ones you do regret? The ones who were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. The ones who were someone else's pawn in a larger game. The ones. He stopped, rubbed his face. There was a woman. 5 years ago. She witnessed something she shouldn't have. One of my people making a move against a rival organization. She was just walking her dog wrong street at the wrong time. What happened to her? I paid her to disappear. New identity, new city. Enough money to start over somewhere far away. He paused. My father would have killed her. Loose ends, he called them. But I couldn't. She hadn't done anything wrong except be in the wrong place. So you showed mercy. I showed weakness, Giovanni corrected. And 3 months later she went to the police. Tried to testify about what she'd seen. We had to manage the situation. Manage how? Discredit her testimony. Bury evidence. Make her look unreliable. His jaw tightened. She ended up in witness protection, which was better than dead but worse than the life I'd paid for her to have. My mercy cost her more than my violence would have. Is that supposed to be a lesson? It's supposed to be the truth. He sat down across from me, elbows on his knees. In my world there are no good choices. Only less bad ones. I can be ruthless and quick, or I can be merciful and create problems that hurt more people in the long run. Those are the options. I thought about the files I'd been building for Agent Reed. The evidence I'd been gathering to put Giovanni in prison for the rest of his life. The testimony I'd agreed to give. Why are you telling me this now? Because you asked. Because you have a right to know who you're trusting with Luca. He leaned back, and in the dim light he looked exhausted. And because I'm tired of lying to you. I lied throughout our marriage. Not directly but by omission. Kept you separate from my real life because I thought that would protect you. All it did was make you leave. You think honesty will make me stay? I think honesty gives you the information you need to make an informed choice. His dark eyes met mine. Stay or go, trust me or don't, let me be Luca's father or fight me in court. Whatever you decide, at least you'll be deciding based on truth instead of carefully managed fiction. It was a good speech. Almost convincing. Except I knew Giovanni well enough to recognize when he was playing a longer game. This confession, this vulnerability, it served a purpose. Either he was testing my reaction or he was building trust so he could ask for something later, or he was setting up a defense for when I inevitably learned these things another way. Giovanni Ferrante didn't do anything without calculation, including, apparently, honesty. Thank you for telling me, I said carefully. It helps to understand the context. Context, he repeated with a slight smile. That's a very lawyer way to process the fact that your ex-husband is a murderer. You're also Luca's father. And you've been nothing but gentle with him. Pause. People are complicated. You taught me that during our marriage, even if you didn't mean to. What did I teach you? That someone can be violent and tender, dangerous and protective. That morality isn't binary. I held his gaze. That sometimes the monsters love their children more fiercely than anyone else because they know exactly what kind of world they're protecting them from. Something flickered in Giovanni's expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. You're not horrified, he observed. I'm terrified. Of you, of your world, of what happens to Luca if we stay in it. The honesty felt dangerous but necessary. But I'm also realistic. You're not going to stop being who you are. And Luca needs his father. So I either accept the reality of our situation, or I spend the rest of my life fighting battles I can't win. Acceptance isn't the same as approval. No, I agreed. But it's a starting point. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of his confession hanging between us like smoke. Finally, Giovanni stood. I should go. Let you get some sleep. You could stay, I said again. The nightmares are worse alone, aren't they? How did you? Because I have them too. The admission came out before I could stop it. Not about the same things. But I dream about the hospital. About Luca's fever. About all the ways I failed him by keeping him secret. Giovanni moved closer, and I saw something soften in his expression. You didn't fail him. I kept him from his father for 7 months. I put him in danger by thinking I could protect him alone. My voice cracked despite my best efforts. I was so focused on keeping him safe from your world that I didn't see your enemies finding him anyway. Lauren. So yes, I have nightmares. And yes, they're worse alone. And if you're going to stay anyway, you might as well be comfortable instead of cramped on a couch that's too short. I saw him calculating again, weighing the offer, trying to determine if this was genuine or manipulation. Your bed, he said carefully. Nothing else. Nothing else, I confirmed. It was a terrible idea. I knew it was a terrible idea. But I was so tired of being alone with my guilt and fear and the weight of secrets I couldn't share. And Giovanni, for all his violence and darkness, was the only person who understood the unique terror of loving a child in a world designed to hurt them. We lay in the dark of my bedroom, not touching, careful distance between us, and the silence was heavy with everything unsaid. The woman you paid to disappear, I said finally. Do you know where she ended up? Montana. Small town, new name, works at a library. He paused. I still have someone check on her every few months. Make sure she's safe, that no one's found her. That witness protection is doing its job. That's not mercy. That's guilt management. But his voice was soft, almost sad. I destroyed her life. The least I can do is make sure no one destroys it further. You're more complicated than you want people to think. Don't romanticize me, Lauren. I'm not complicated. I'm just very good at justifying terrible things. I turned on my side to face him, found him already looking at me in the darkness. Do you ever think about getting out? Yes. Walking away from all of it, taking Luca somewhere safe, starting over? Every single day. His hand moved across the space between us, found mine, and the touch sent electricity up my arm. But my father taught me another lesson when I was young. You don't get to walk away from this life. You die in it or you die trying to leave it. Those are the only options. That's fatalistic. That's realistic. His thumb traced circles on my palm. But for what it's worth, if I could go back, do things differently, choose a different path, I would. Not because I regret the power or the money or even the violence, but because I regret what it cost me. What it cost us. We can't go back. No. But maybe we can go forward differently. Be honest with each other even when the truth is ugly. Build something real instead of performing a relationship for appearances. It was exactly what I should have wanted. What I'd claimed I wanted during our marriage. honesty, partnership, trust. But all I could think about was the encrypted phone hidden in my drawer. The evidence I'd been gathering. The testimony Agent Reed was waiting for. The fact that I was lying to Giovanni even as he offered me truth. "I'd like that," I said, and hated how easily the lie came. "Would you?" His voice was gentle, but I heard the skepticism underneath. "Because I'm not sure you trust me, Lauren. I'm not sure you should trust me. And I'm not sure either of us knows how to be honest when our entire relationship has been built on secrets and selective truth. Then we learn. Or we destroy each other trying." His hand tightened on mine, and I felt the weight of his next words before he spoke them. "I love you," he said quietly. "I never stopped. Even when you left, even when I was furious about Luca, even knowing you'll probably leave again the moment you think it's safe. I love you." The words should have felt like victory. Confirmation that I had leverage, that I could use his feelings against him, that Agent Reed's plan was working perfectly. Instead, they felt like a knife to the chest. "Giovanni, you don't have to say it back. I'm not asking you to." He released my hand, rolled onto his back. "I'm just telling you the truth like we agreed. And the truth is, you're the only person who's ever made me want to be something other than what I am." I lay there in the dark, listening to his breathing even out as he fell back into uneasy sleep, and tried to remember why destroying him was the right choice. Tried to remember that men like Giovanni didn't change, didn't deserve mercy, didn't get happy endings. Tried to remember that I was doing this for Luca, for safety, for justice. But all I could feel was the warmth of his hand on mine. And all I could hear was his voice saying "I love you" like it was both confession and condemnation. The next morning, I woke to find Giovanni already gone. A note on the pillow in his precise handwriting. "Meeting until noon. Matteo has the day's schedule. Call if you need anything." Professional, distant, like last night hadn't happened. Maybe that was for the best. I checked on Luca, still sleeping, peaceful, unaware of the war being waged around him, and made coffee with shaking hands. The encrypted phone buzzed in my drawer. Status update needed. "When can we meet?" Agent Reed, impatient as always. I typed back quickly. "Need more time." He's suspicious. "Of what?" "Everything. We'll contact when safe." I deleted the exchange, destroyed the evidence, and tried to ignore the guilt clawing at my chest. My regular phone rang. Marcus Rossi, Giovanni's general counsel. "Lauren, good morning. Do you have time for a call today? I'd like to discuss the Brooklyn warehouse review, and there are some additional properties I'd like you to assess." "Of course. I can come to the office." "Actually, I was hoping to come to you. Giovanni mentioned you're working from home while Luca recovers, and I have some sensitive documents that are better discussed in private." Sensitive documents. Code for things that couldn't be reviewed in an office with cameras and witnesses. "That's fine. When?" 2 p.m. After we hung up, I spent the morning doing exactly what I'd agreed to do. Legitimate legal work, reviewing contracts and identifying compliance issues. Building a paper trail that proved I was earning my salary honestly. But I also photographed everything. Documented patterns, flagged suspicious transactions, created a shadow file that Agent Reed would eventually use to dismantle the Ferrante organization brick by brick. Marcus Rossi arrived precisely at 2 p.m. Late 50s, silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who'd spent decades navigating the space between legal and criminal. "Mrs. Ferrante, pleasure to see you again." He shook my hand with professional warmth. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all. Luca's napping." We settled at the dining table, and Marcus pulled out several folders. "The Brooklyn warehouse first. Giovanni mentioned you had concerns about the neighborhood. The zoning is complicated. It's technically commercial space, but there's been a push from the community board to rezone the area for residential development. If that happens, your permits could be challenged. And your recommendation? Delay acquisition until the zoning issue is resolved. Or purchase through a shell company that can absorb the potential loss if the permits are revoked." Pause. Or be prepared to negotiate with the community board and whatever organizations actually control the neighborhood. Marcus smiled slightly. You're thinking like one of us. I'm thinking like a lawyer who wants to keep her clients out of court. Fair enough. He pulled out another folder. This is more delicate. Giovanni has been approached about a partnership opportunity. Import-export business, European connections, significant profit potential. But the partner in question has a complicated history. He slid a dossier across the table. I opened it, saw a name I recognized from news reports about organized crime in Eastern Europe. This man is under investigation by Interpol, I said flatly. Allegedly under investigation. Nothing proven. Marcus, partnering with someone actively being investigated by international law enforcement is the definition of legal exposure. Which is why Giovanni wanted your assessment. Marcus leaned back. But there are other considerations. Turning down this partnership could create territorial tensions. The gentleman in question controls significant shipping routes that we currently rely on. Saying no isn't without consequence. I read through the dossier carefully, making notes, while my mind raced. This was exactly the kind of information Agent Reed wanted. Evidence of Giovanni knowingly partnering with international criminals. Documentation of relationships that would prove criminal conspiracy. My legal recommendation is to decline, I said finally. The risk-reward ratio doesn't justify the exposure. But, I paused, choosing my words carefully. If there are operational reasons why declining isn't viable, then structure the partnership through multiple layers of legitimate business entities. Create enough distance that if anything goes wrong, Giovanni isn't directly implicated. Plausible deniability. Strategic liability management. I held his gaze. But understand that if this partner goes down, anyone connected to him becomes a target for investigation. No amount of corporate structure fully protects against that. Marcus gathered his documents, and I saw approval in his expression. You're very good at this. I was trained by excellent professors. Giovanni speaks highly of you. Says you're one of the few people willing to tell him when he's about to make a mistake. Someone has to. After Marcus left, I photographed the dossier before returning it, added it to my growing file of evidence, and tried not to think about what I was doing. Tried not to think about Giovanni's confession last night. His nightmares. His admission of love. Tried not to think about the fact that I was betraying him with every document I copied, every transaction I flagged, every piece of evidence I gathered. The man who'd told me he loved me. The man who'd killed people and justified it as business. The man who was Luca's father. The man I was going to help put in prison for the rest of his life. I picked up Luca when he woke from his nap, held him close, and whispered apologies he was too young to understand. Sorry. For all of this. For every choice I've made and every choice I'm about to make. Sorry. But I didn't stop. Didn't stop gathering evidence. Didn't stop planning Giovanni's destruction. Because the truth I couldn't admit to anyone. Not to Agent Reed, not to Jessica. Not even to myself most days, was that I wasn't just doing this to protect Luca. I was doing it because some broken, vindictive part of me wanted Giovanni to suffer the way he'd made me suffer during our marriage. Wanted him to feel what it was like to be shut out, controlled, manipulated by someone he trusted. Wanted him to understand that love without honesty was just another form of violence. Even if that meant becoming exactly the kind of person I'd sworn I'd never be. Even if that meant proving Giovanni right when he said mercy was weakness in his world. Even if that meant losing whatever remained of my own soul in the process. The price of revenge, I was learning, was paid in pieces of yourself you could never get back. And I was already too far gone to stop paying it. Chapter 5. The Deal with the Devil. The message from Agent Reed came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after I'd moved into the Upper East Side apartment. Need to meet. Urgent. Today if possible. I stared at the encrypted phone, weighing risks against necessity. Giovanni had been increasingly present, arriving early with coffee, staying late to help with Luca's bedtime, finding excuses to extend every visit. The walls between us were eroding in ways that terrified me because they felt less like strategy and more like surrender. Where? Type back. Coffee shop. Corner of Amsterdam and 72nd. 11 a.m. Come alone. Alone was impossible with Matteo shadowing my every move, but I'd learned to work around Giovanni's security over the past weeks. Learned their shift changes, their blind spots, the moments when they trusted me enough to relax their vigilance. I told Matteo I needed to take Luca for a walk in Central Park, that the pediatric nurse had recommended more outdoor time for his recovery. He didn't question it. Why would he? I was just a mother taking her son to the park, not a woman meeting with federal agents to discuss dismantling her ex-husband's criminal empire. The coffee shop was deliberately chosen, crowded enough to provide cover, public enough to seem innocent, far enough from my usual routine to avoid suspicion. I spotted Reed immediately, sitting at a corner table with his back to the wall, that forgettable face that probably helped him blend into surveillance operations. I sat down across from him, Luca in his stroller beside me, already reaching for the plastic keys I'd brought to keep him occupied. "Mrs. Ferrante," Reed said quietly. "Thank you for coming. This is dangerous. If Giovanni finds out, your protection is guaranteed. Immunity agreement, witness protection if necessary, full federal resources." He pulled out a folder, kept it below the table where security cameras wouldn't catch it. "But we need to accelerate the timeline." "Why?" "Because we're not the only ones investigating Ferrante." Reed's expression was grim. "Dia has been building a case parallel to ours. They're focused on drug trafficking through his shipping routes. Different evidence, different crimes, but overlapping targets." "What does that mean?" "It means if DA moves first, our case becomes secondary. It means Giovanni could cut a deal with them that gives him immunity on the charges we're building. It means," he leaned forward, "it means you could end up trapped with a man who walks away from everything while everyone around him burns." I spread through my chest. "Giovanni doesn't traffic drugs. His businesses are import-export, but not narcotics." "Are you certain? Or is that what he's told you?" Reed slid a photo across the table. "This shipping container came through one of Ferrante's ports last month. Official manifest said textiles. Actual contents included 200 kilos of heroin." I stared at the photo, a shipping container with Giovanni's company logo, customs seals broken, packages visible inside that clearly weren't textiles. "This could be fabricated," I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to myself. "It's not. We have 3 more just like it, all traced back to companies in Ferrante's network." Reed's tone gentled slightly. "I know this is difficult. I know you're trying to believe he's not as bad as the evidence suggests. But Lauren, the man you're protecting, is responsible for flooding American cities with opioids. He's part of a supply chain that kills people every single day." Luca dropped his keys, and I automatically bent to retrieve them, my hands shaking. "Heroin. Drugs that destroyed families, killed children, created the kind of devastation I'd spent my entire legal career fighting against." "I need more than photos," I said. "I need documentation. Shipping manifests, financial records, something that proves Giovanni knew what was in those containers. That's why I need you to accelerate evidence gathering." Reed slid another document across. "This is a warrant authorization. With your testimony and the evidence you've already provided, we can get a judge to sign off on wiretaps, surveillance, forensic accounting. But we need you to confirm that Ferrante has personal knowledge of the drug trafficking. You want me to ask him directly. I want you to create a situation where he reveals it voluntarily. Pillow talk, casual conversation, whatever works." Reed's eyes were cold, calculating. "You're sleeping in the same apartment. You're working for his organization. He trusts you, or at least he's starting to. Use that." The words hit like a slap. "You want me to seduce information out of him. I want you to do whatever is necessary to keep your son safe from a man who's more dangerous than you realize." I looked at Luca, happily chewing on his plastic keys, oblivious to the fact that his mother was discussing sending his father to prison for the rest of his life. If I do this, if I get you the confirmation you need, what happens to Luca? He loses his father. He keeps his mother. He grows up safe, provided for, without the threat of cartel violence or federal prosecution hanging over his head. Reed paused. And for what it's worth, Ferrante brought this on himself. You're not destroying his life. You're protecting yourself and your son from the consequences of his choices. It was a good rationalization. Almost convincing. Except I knew the truth was more complicated. Giovanni had made choices that led us here, yes. But so had I. Every document I'd photographed, every conversation I'd reported, every piece of evidence I'd gathered, those were my choices. My decisions to betray him. And now Reed was asking me to go further. To manipulate Giovanni's trust, exploit his vulnerability, use his love against him in the most intimate way possible. I need time to think, I said. We don't have time. DA is moving within weeks, maybe days. If you want any control over what happens next, we need to act now. Reed stood, left the folder on the table. Think fast, Lauren. Because the clock is running out, and once DA makes their move, all your options disappear. He walked away, leaving me sitting alone with evidence of Giovanni's crimes and a choice that felt less like decision and more like damnation. I spent the afternoon in the park with Luca, pushing him on baby swings and trying to organize my thoughts into something resembling a plan. The evidence against Giovanni was damning if it was real. Heroin trafficking wasn't gray area business dealings or aggressive tax avoidance. It was people dying, families destroyed, communities devastated. But Reed had lied to me before, or at least shaded the truth. The immunity agreement I'd signed had so many loopholes and contingencies that my attorney would have advised against it if I'd bothered to consult one. The promises of protection were contingent on cooperation, which meant I was only safe as long as I remained useful. And the photos of the shipping containers. Those could be fabricated, manipulated, or taken out of context. I'd seen enough corporate litigation to know that evidence could be shaped to tell whatever story the prosecutor wanted. I needed to know if Giovanni was actually trafficking drugs, which meant I needed to ask him directly. The thought made my stomach turn. Giovanni had been honest with me about the violence, the murders, the darkness of his world. Would he be honest about this too? Or would he lie, knowing that drug trafficking carried sentences that even his lawyers and connections couldn't mitigate? My phone buzzed. Giovanni. Dinner tonight. We'll cook. The domesticity of it felt surreal. The mob boss who maybe trafficked heroin wanted to cook me dinner. Okay, I texted back. What time? 7. I'll bring groceries. I had 5 hours to decide if I was going to have the most dangerous conversation of my life. Giovanni arrived at 6:30 with bags of groceries and a bottle of wine I recognized from our marriage. My favorite Brunello from a vineyard in Tuscany he'd taken me to during our honeymoon. You remembered, I said, watching him unpack ingredients for what looked like an elaborate meal. I remember everything about you. He'd said it before, but this time it sounded different. Weighted with meaning I couldn't quite parse. Including the fact that you stress cook when you're anxious, and you've been anxious all day. I hadn't realized he could read me that well. How do you know I'm anxious? Because you took Luca to the park for 4 hours, which is 3 hours longer than his nap schedule allows. Because you've been staring at your phone like it's a bomb about to explode. And because... He moved closer, studied my face. Because I know you, Lauren. And something is wrong. This was the moment. The opening Reed wanted me to exploit. I need to ask you something, I said carefully. And I need you to be honest with me. Always. But I saw wariness creep into his expression. Your shipping companies. The import-export businesses. What exactly are you moving? Giovanni's hands stilled on the cutting board where he'd been preparing vegetables. What prompted this question? Marcus showed me files on a potential partnership. International connections, significant profit margins. But the partner is under investigation by Interpol. I held his gaze. It made me wonder what kind of cargo generates the profits you're generating. Because the math doesn't work for legitimate goods alone. The silence stretched between us, dangerous and charged. You're asking if I traffic drugs, Giovanni said finally. I'm asking what you traffic. Period. He set down the knife, turned to face me fully. And if I do? If I tell you that some of those shipping containers carry things that aren't on the manifest, what then? My heart hammered against my ribs. Then I need to know what I'm involved in. What Luca is involved in. What kind of protection I actually need versus what kind of guilt I'm carrying. Giovanni studied me for a long moment, and I could see him calculating, weighing truth against self-preservation, honesty against strategic advantage. No, he said finally. I don't traffic drugs. Giovanni. I'm not saying I'm clean. I'm not saying every container that moves through my ports carries exactly what the manifest claims. But drugs. He shook his head. That's a line I don't cross. That's a business I won't touch. Why not? It's more profitable than anything else. Because my mother died of a heroin overdose when I was 12. The words came out flat, emotionless. Because I watched what that poison did to her, to our family, to the neighborhood. Because when my father tried to push me into that business, I refused. It was the only time I ever defied him, and it nearly cost me everything. I stared at him, trying to determine if this was truth or a carefully constructed lie. You never told me that. About your mother. You never asked. He returned to chopping vegetables, movements sharp and controlled. And it's not something I advertise. Weakness in my world, remember? Sentiment is leverage. But you're telling me now. Because you asked directly. Because we agreed to honesty. He glanced at me. And because if you're questioning whether I'm trafficking drugs, something prompted it. Someone said something, showed you something, made you doubt me. And I need to know what that was. This was the moment. Choice. Tell him about Reed, about the FBI, about the photos and the investigation and the immunity deal I'd signed. Or lie. Deflect. Protect my cover and continue gathering evidence until Reed had enough to move forward. Marcus mentioned the DEA is investigating some of your partners, I said, threading truth and fiction together. I wanted to make sure you weren't exposed to that kind of liability. The DEA investigates everyone in international shipping. It's routine. But Giovanni's expression had hardened. Who specifically did Marcus mention? He didn't give names. Just said there were ongoing investigations that could complicate partnerships. Giovanni pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. I'll have him send me details. If there are DEA issues I'm not aware of, I need to handle them immediately. Giovanni. This is serious, Lauren. If the DEA thinks I'm moving drugs, they'll use RICO statutes to seize everything. The businesses, the properties, the accounts. They'll freeze assets that keep my organization running, that pay for Luca's security, that fund the protection keeping you both safe. He paced to the window, that restless energy I recognized as anger barely contained. Did Marcus show you actual evidence? Photos, documents, anything concrete? No. Just mentioned it as a concern. Then someone is feeding you information designed to make you doubt me. To create distance between us. He turned to face me. Who else have you talked to about this? My pulse quickened. No one. Why would I? Because you're smart and cautious, and you don't make accusations without research. His dark eyes searched my face. And because you've been secretive lately. Deleting messages, taking calls in other rooms, being vague about your schedule. I noticed, Lauren. I've been noticing for weeks. The walls were closing in. Giovanni's suspicion was no longer theoretical. It was active, focused, dangerous. I'm allowed to have privacy, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Just because we're co-parenting doesn't mean you get to monitor my every conversation. Privacy is different from secrecy. Privacy is normal. Secrecy is. He stopped himself, jaw clenching. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just asking for the same honesty I've been giving you. You want honesty. Fine. The anger I'd been suppressing for weeks erupted. Yes, I've been secretive. Yes, I've been cautious about what I tell you. Because you're still the man who shut me out for 2 years of marriage. You're still the man who murders people and justifies it as business. You're still the father of your child, Giovanni interrupted, his voice quiet and deadly. The man protecting you from threats you don't even understand. The man who's been trying to build something honest between us while you've been, what? Gathering evidence. Planning your exit. Preparing to take Luca and disappear again. Would you blame me if I was? Yes. He moved closer and I forced myself not to step back. Because I've given you no reason to doubt me since Boston. I've been present, honest, patient. I've respected your boundaries, provided everything you and Luca need, and asked for nothing except time with my son and a chance to prove I'm more than the worst version of myself. You are the worst version of yourself, I shot back. The violence, the crimes, the nightmares you have every night about the things you've done, that's who you are, Giovanni. Not the devoted father act you've been performing. It's not an act. His voice dropped to something dangerous. I love my son. Love you. And if you can't see the difference between who I am with you and who I have to be in my world, then you're not as smart as I thought you were. Maybe I'm smart enough to see that those versions of you are the same person. That you don't get to compartmentalize violence and call it love. The apartment fell silent except for Luca's babbling from his playpen, oblivious to the war erupting around him. Giovanni turned away, gripped the edge of the counter with both hands. Get out. What? Get out. Take Luca and leave. Go back to Boston, go anywhere you want, I don't care. I'll arrange security, set up accounts to cover all your expenses, sign whatever custody agreement your lawyers draft. His voice was hollow, destroyed. But I can't do this anymore. Can't keep trying to prove myself to someone who's already decided I'm irredeemable. I should have felt victorious. This was the opening Reed wanted. Giovanni pushing me away, creating distance that would make my betrayal easier to justify. Instead, I felt something break inside my chest. Giovanni. I said get out, Lauren. He still didn't turn around. I'll have Matteo help you pack. You can be gone in an hour. I don't want to leave. Then what do you want? Now he turned, and I saw something in his expression that looked like hope and desperation tangled together. Because I can't figure it out. You accept my help but resent my protection. You work for my organization but question every decision. You sleep in my arms but suspect me of crimes I haven't committed. Want. To destroy you, the honest answer would have been. To watch your empire burn and know I was the one who lit the match. But looking at him now, vulnerable and frustrated and so desperate to be seen as something other than a monster, I couldn't say it. I want to trust you, I said instead. But I don't know how. Then let me help you learn. Giovanni crossed the distance between us, caught my face in his hands. Ask me anything. Anything, Lauren. I'll tell you the truth, even if it costs me everything. This was the moment Reed wanted. The opening to extract a confession that would damn Giovanni forever. But I couldn't do it. Couldn't weaponize his vulnerability like I'd planned. Couldn't look into his eyes and manipulate him into providing evidence that would take him from Luca forever. I need time, I said finally. To think. To figure out what I actually want versus what I think I should want. Giovanni released me slowly. How much time? I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. He nodded, stepped back, and I saw something shudder behind his eyes. The vulnerability disappearing, replaced by the careful control I recognized from our marriage. Fine. Take your time. He moved back to the cutting board, picked up the knife. But understand that time is a luxury we might not have. If there are DEA investigations brewing, if my partners are compromised, if threats are escalating, waiting could cost us everything. Or acting too fast could cost us more. That's the gamble, isn't it? He began chopping again, movements precise despite the tension radiating from his frame. Timing, trust, truth. All of it has to align perfectly or everything falls apart. I watched him cook, this dangerous man preparing dinner in my kitchen, and wondered which of us was more trapped. Giovanni, who loved me but couldn't escape his nature. Or me, who hated him but couldn't stop wanting him anyway. The answer, I suspected, was both. And neither of us would survive what came next. Chapter 6. The Confession Game. We didn't speak during dinner. Giovanni cooked ossobuco with saffron risotto, the meal he'd made the night he proposed during our first life together. I wasn't sure if the choice was deliberate or unconscious, but either way it felt like provocation. Luca sat in his high chair between us, smearing pureed vegetables across his face with gleeful abandon, the only one of us unburdened by the weight of everything unsaid. After dinner, Giovanni insisted on cleaning up. I retreated to the nursery with Luca, going through the bedtime routine on autopilot while my mind raced through scenarios and consequences. Reed wanted me to extract a confession. Giovanni had offered complete honesty. All I had to do was ask the right questions. But the photos Reed had shown me, the shipping containers with heroin, contradicted everything Giovanni had just told me about his mother, about his refusal to traffic drugs, about the lines he wouldn't cross. Someone was lying. Question was who? And whether I was brave enough to find out. Giovanni appeared in the nursery doorway as I was lowering Luca into his crib. "He's beautiful when he sleeps," Giovanni said quietly. "Peaceful. Like the world can't touch him. That's what I'm trying to give him. A world that can't touch him. By keeping him from me." There was no accusation in his voice, just genuine curiosity. "Or by keeping me from destroying it." I turned to face him. "Both maybe. I don't know anymore." Giovanni moved closer, stood beside me looking down at our son. "I meant what I said earlier. If you want to leave, I'll help you. Set you up somewhere safe, provide everything you need, make sure you're protected." He paused. "But I'm asking you not to. Not yet. Not until you give me a real chance to prove I'm more than what you think I am. How do I give you a chance when I don't know what's real? When every version of you contradicts the last? Then let me show you." He pulled out his phone, pulled up something, handed it to me. "This is my entire financial structure. Every account, every holding, every transaction for the past 5 years. Look through it. Hire forensic accountants if you want. Verify that I'm telling you the truth about the drug trafficking." I stared at the screen, scrolling through spreadsheets that represented billions of dollars moving through dozens of countries. "You're just giving me access to everything. To prove I'm not lying. To prove I trust you." His dark eyes met mine. "Even if you don't trust me yet." It was a test. Had to be. Giovanni didn't hand over financial records without reason. Didn't expose vulnerabilities unless he was playing a longer game. But looking at the data on his phone, I saw what he wanted me to see. No transactions with known drug cartels, no payments that aligned with narcotics trafficking patterns, nothing that suggested he was moving heroin through his shipping routes. Which meant either he was telling the truth about his mother and his refusal to traffic drugs, or he was sophisticated enough to hide the evidence where even forensic analysis wouldn't find it. "This doesn't prove anything," I said, handing back his phone. "Just that you're good at hiding things. Or that there's nothing to hide." Giovanni pocketed his phone. "But I can see you don't believe me. Someone has convinced you I'm trafficking drugs, and no amount of evidence will change your mind until you see proof yourself. Then show me proof." "How? What would convince you?" I thought about Reed's photos, about the shipping containers with Giovanni's company logos, about the testimony the FBI wanted me to provide. "Take me to the port," I said. "Show me the operations. Let me see what's actually moving through your shipping routes." Giovanni studied me for a long moment. "That's not a small ask. The ports are secured for a reason. Bringing you there, exposing you to that world, it creates risks I've been trying to avoid. I'm already exposed. Already at risk." I moved closer. And if I'm going to trust you, I need to understand your business. Not the sanitized version you show investors and lawyers. The real operations. And if you see something you can't unsee, something that confirms your worst suspicions about me, then at least I'll know the truth. Giovanni nodded slowly. Okay. Tomorrow night. I'll arrange it. Why not now? Because port operations happen at night, and Luca needs one of us here. And because... He stepped closer, his voice dropping. Because I need to make sure you understand what you're asking for. Once you see my world, really see it, you can't go back to pretending you don't know. You'll be complicit, Lauren. A witness. And if anything ever goes wrong, that knowledge could destroy you. Maybe I'm already destroyed. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or sympathy. Then let's be destroyed together. He kissed me then, not asking permission, just claiming my mouth with a desperation that felt like drowning and salvation all at once. I should have pulled away, should have maintained boundaries, should have remembered that this was manipulation and strategy and revenge. But I kissed him back instead, let him back me against the nursery wall, let him press into me with an urgency that matched my own fractured need. Tell me to stop, Giovanni murmured against my throat. Tell me this is a mistake and I'll walk away. Couldn't. Wouldn't. Because the truth I'd been avoiding for weeks was that I wanted this. Wanted him, despite everything. Despite the lies and the violence and the impossible situation we were trapped in. Don't stop, I whispered. We barely made it to my bedroom, leaving a trail of discarded clothes and abandoned control. When he finally pressed into me, it felt like coming home and falling apart simultaneously. This was different from our marriage. More honest somehow, even though we were both still lying. More desperate, like we both knew this might be the last time before everything shattered. Giovanni was gentle at first. Careful, attentive, watching my face like he was memorizing every expression. But I didn't want gentle. Didn't want to be treated like something fragile. Stop holding back, I said, nails raking down his back. I'm not going to break. Yes, you will. But he gave me what I asked for anyway. Intensity without restraint, passion without apology, the full force of everything he'd been controlling. And I did break. Came apart in his arms with his name on my lips, shattering into pieces I wasn't sure I could reassemble. Afterward we lay tangled together, breathing hard, the silence heavy with implications neither of us wanted to voice. I love you, Giovanni said into the darkness. I need you to know that. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever you see at the port, whatever you decide about us, I love you. That's real even when everything else is complicated. I should have said it back. Should have given him that comfort, that lie. But I couldn't. I know, I said instead. It wasn't enough. We both knew it wasn't enough. But it was all I could offer without destroying what remained of my carefully constructed revenge. Giovanni left before dawn, pressing a kiss to my forehead and murmuring something about arrangements for the night. I lay in bed after he'd gone, staring at the ceiling, trying to reconcile the man who just made love to me with the man I was planning to destroy. My encrypted phone buzzed in its hiding place. Status. Need update immediately. Read demanding answers I didn't have. I pulled out the phone, typed carefully. Meeting tonight. Port operations. Will gather evidence. Excellent. Document everything. Photos, names, cargo manifests. This is the breakthrough we need. Understood. Lauren, be careful. Ferrante is dangerous when he feels threatened. Don't take unnecessary risks. The concern felt hollow. Reed didn't care about my safety. He cared about his case, his evidence, his conviction rate. I deleted the exchange, hid the phone again, and tried to ignore the guilt clawing at my chest. Marcus Rossi called at 9 a.m. His voice tight with controlled urgency. Lauren, I need you to come to the office. We have a situation. What kind of situation? The kind we don't discuss over the phone. Giovanni asked me to bring you in immediately. Can you be here in 30 minutes? After arranging for the pediatric nurse to watch Luca, I took a car to Ferrante headquarters in Midtown. The building was exactly what I expected. Gleaming glass and steel, corporate respectability masking whatever happened in the rooms where decisions were actually made. Marcus met me in the lobby, escorted me to a private conference room on the top floor. Giovanni was already there, along with 3 other men I didn't recognize. "Lauren, thank you for coming." Giovanni's expression was unreadable. "We have a problem, and I need your legal expertise." He pulled up something on the conference room screen. Surveillance footage from one of his ports. Timestamp from 2 nights ago. I watched as a shipping container was opened, inspected by what looked like customs officials, then sealed again. "This container was flagged for inspection," Giovanni explained. "Official manifest said electronics from Germany. Actual contents matched the manifest. Laptops, phones, tablets, all legitimate. Then what's the problem?" "The problem," he clicked to another video, different angle, "is that 6 hours later, after customs cleared it, someone accessed that container again, removed the electronics, and replaced them with these." The video showed men in unmarked clothing opening the container, efficiently removing boxes, replacing them with identical-looking packages, then resealing everything. "Who are they?" "Yes. That's what we're trying to figure out." Giovanni's jaw was tight. "But the important part is what they left behind." He pulled up photos, the packages opened, contents visible. "Heroin. Exactly like the photos Reed had shown me." "Someone is using your shipping routes to traffic drugs," I said slowly. "Someone is framing me for trafficking drugs," Giovanni corrected. "This container was already inspected, already cleared. Someone waited until it was clean, then contaminated it, knowing it would be traced back to my company." One of the other men spoke, older, with the bearing of someone who'd been in this business longer than anyone else in the room. "We've identified 3 other containers with similar patterns. All flagged for inspection, all cleared, all accessed afterward and contaminated." "This is sophisticated," Marcus added. "Whoever is doing this has access to port security, customs schedules, and your shipping manifests. They know exactly which containers will be inspected and when." "Why?" "Yes. What's the end game?" "To build a case," Giovanni said flatly. "To create evidence that I'm trafficking drugs even though I'm not. To force me into a corner where I either cooperate with whoever is orchestrating this, or I go down for crimes I didn't commit." "DA," I said, and all eyes turned to me. "The DEA is investigating you. If they have photos like these, then someone is feeding them manipulated evidence," Giovanni finished. "Creating a case that looks airtight but is entirely fabricated." My mind raced. This was what Reed had shown me. Photos of containers with Giovanni's logos, heroin visible, customs seals broken. Evidence that looked damning because it was designed to look damning. But if Giovanni was telling the truth, if someone was planting drugs after inspection, then Reed's entire case was built on lies. Or Reed knew it was fabricated and was using me anyway. "What do you want me to do?" "Ask carefully. Review everything. Find the legal vulnerabilities. Identify who has the access and resources to pull this off. Help us build a defense before DEA moves." Giovanni's expression was grim. "Because if they execute search warrants based on this evidence, they'll seize everything. And I'll spend the rest of my life in prison for crimes I didn't commit." The irony was devastating. I'd been gathering evidence to put Giovanni in prison for exactly these crimes. Now he was asking me to help prove he was innocent. And I had no idea which version of reality was true. "I'll need access to everything," I said. "Security footage from all affected ports, customs paperwork, shipping manifests, employee records. If someone inside your organization is facilitating this, we need to find them." "You'll have it all by this afternoon," Marcus promised. After the meeting, Giovanni pulled me aside. "Tonight still happens," he said quietly. "The port visit. But now you'll understand why I need you to see it. Why I need you to believe I'm not who someone is trying to make me appear to be. Giovanni, if this is real, If someone is really framing you, then I need you on my side. He caught my face in his hands. Not just as Luca's mother, not just as legal counsel, but as someone who believes I'm capable of being better than my worst actions. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that the vulnerability in his eyes was real, that the conspiracy he was describing was true, that I hadn't been manipulated by federal agents into destroying an innocent man. But I'd been lied to by too many people, including myself, to trust anything anymore. I'll review the evidence, I said. That's all I can promise right now. That's enough. He pressed a kiss to my forehead. For now, that's enough. I spent the afternoon in a conference room, surrounded by documents and surveillance footage, trying to separate truth from manipulation. The evidence of tampering was compelling. Time-stamps showing containers being accessed after customs clearance. Security footage of men in unmarked clothing. Manifests that matched inspection reports perfectly. Too perfectly, suggesting they'd been altered. But the evidence could also be fabricated. Security footage could be edited. Documents could be forged. Everything Giovanni was showing me could be an elaborate lie designed to convince me of his innocence. I pulled out my encrypted phone, typed a message to read. Ferrante claims he's being framed. Has evidence of tampering. Need to verify your sources. The response came quickly. Ferrante is lying. Our evidence is solid. Multiple independent sources confirm drug trafficking. Don't let him manipulate you. What sources? Show me the chain of custody. That's classified until trial. You need to trust the process. Trust works both ways. If you want my cooperation, I need transparency. Long pause. Meet me. Tomorrow. Noon. Same location. I'll show you what I can. I deleted the exchange, leaned back in my chair, and tried to think clearly through the chaos. Either Giovanni was a drug trafficker who'd spent weeks manipulating me into doubting legitimate evidence. Or he was being framed by someone with the resources and access to fabricate an airtight case. Or, and this was the possibility that terrified me most, everyone was lying, and the truth was something none of them wanted me to see. Giovanni appeared in the doorway. Ready for tonight. I don't know if I'm ready for anything anymore. That's honest at least. He moved into the room, studied the documents I'd been reviewing. What's your assessment? That I'm either looking at evidence of a sophisticated frame job, or evidence of you being very good at covering your tracks. I met his gaze. And I have no way to know which is true. So trust your instincts. What does your gut tell you? That I was in over my head. That every choice I made would hurt someone I cared about. That there was no right answer, only degrees of wrong. My gut tells me, I said slowly, that I'm about to see something tonight that will force me to choose a side. And that whichever side I choose, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Giovanni nodded slowly. Probably. But at least you'll know the truth. Whatever it costs. And if the truth destroys everything, then we'll build something new from the ashes. He offered his hand. Come on. Let's go see what kind of monster I really am. I took his hand, let him pull me up, and followed him toward whatever revelation waited at the port. Knowing that by tomorrow everything would be different. Knowing that the confession game we'd been playing had just turned lethal. And knowing that I was no longer sure which of us was the predator and which was the prey. Chapter 7: The Fire and the Blood. The port was exactly what I expected and nothing I was prepared for. We arrived after midnight. Giovanni's convoy of black SUVs moving through industrial Brooklyn like predators stalking territory they owned. The air smelled of salt water and diesel, the harbor lights reflecting off dark water in patterns that looked almost beautiful if you ignored what they represented. Stay close, Giovanni said as we exited the vehicle. Matteo and 3 other security personnel immediately formed a perimeter around us. And don't touch anything. Some of the cargo is sensitive. Sensitive how? You'll see. The warehouse was massive. Shipping containers stacked 3 high. Forklifts moving cargo with mechanical efficiency. Workers in company uniforms operating with the precision of a military unit. Everything looked legitimate, professional, exactly like any other import-export operation. Until you looked closer. Those men, I said quietly, gesturing to a group near the far wall. They're not wearing your company uniform. No. They work for the Customs Inspection Service. We pay them to conduct thorough inspections of every container that comes through this facility. Giovanni's tone was matter-of-fact. It's technically legal. Private security contracting with federal employees during off-hours. But it ensures that anything problematic is caught before it becomes my problem. You're bribing customs officials. I'm paying for additional security services. His expression was neutral. The distinction matters in court. We walked deeper into the warehouse, and I saw what he meant about sensitivity. Some containers were marked with codes I didn't recognize. Others had additional locks and seals beyond standard customs equipment. Giovanni led me to a container in the corner, gestured for it to be opened. The doors swung wide, revealing electronics, laptops, tablets, phones, exactly like the manifest claimed. This is the container from the surveillance footage, Giovanni explained. Inspected 2 days ago, cleared by customs, sealed and logged. We documented everything. He pulled up his phone, showed me timestamp video of the inspection process. Customs officials examining cargo, signing off, sealing the container. Everything by the book. Now watch this. He switched to different footage. Same container 6 hours later. Men in dark clothing approaching, cutting the seal, opening the container, removing boxes, replacing them with identical-looking packages, resealing everything with equipment that looked exactly like official customs tools. Who are they? He asked. We don't know yet. Faces are obscured, no identifying marks. Movements suggest military or federal training. Giovanni's jaw tightened. But they have access to customs seals, security codes, and shipping schedules. That's not random criminals. That's institutional. You think it's DA. I think it's someone with federal resources and motivation to see me destroyed. He gestured to another container nearby. This one was contaminated 3 days ago. We discovered it during routine secondary inspection. Our own people, not customs. Found heroin hidden inside electronics shipments. What did you do with it? Documented everything, isolated the cargo, reported it to our legal team. He met my gaze. Not to authorities before you ask. Because the moment I report finding drugs in my own containers, I become the primary suspect in trafficking them. But I couldn't just destroy evidence that proves someone is setting me up. It was a calculated risk. Keeping evidence of drug trafficking without reporting it was itself illegal. But reporting it would trigger investigations he couldn't control. Show me the contaminated cargo, I said. Giovanni led me to a separate section of the warehouse, more heavily guarded, where 3 containers sat isolated from the rest. He had them opened one by one. The first contained what looked like industrial machinery parts. Metal components, gear assemblies, nothing obviously wrong. Until one of Giovanni's men demonstrated how the pieces could be disassembled to reveal hollow spaces packed with white powder. The second container held textiles, bolts of fabric, exactly as manifested. Except when unrolled, some of the fabric had been treated with something that made the fibers stiff. Laboratory testing, Giovanni explained, had confirmed heroin mixed with fabric dyes. The third container was electronics again. But when the devices were opened, the batteries had been replaced with packages wrapped in vacuum-sealed plastic. Conservative estimate, Giovanni said quietly. About 400 kilos total across these 3 containers. Street value somewhere around $40 million. I stared at the evidence. Undeniable, damning, exactly what Reed had shown me in photos. But you didn't put it there, I said. I didn't put it there. Giovanni's expression was grim. Someone else did, knowing it would be found, knowing it would be traced back to my operation, knowing I'd either have to destroy evidence or keep it and look guilty. Except you have the surveillance footage showing tampering, which any prosecutor will argue is fabricated. That I staged the tampering footage to create reasonable doubt. He gestured to the containers. This is a trap, Lauren. Someone has spent months, maybe years, building a case against me. Planting evidence, manipulating customs reports, creating a paper trail that looks airtight. And when Dia moves, and they will move, I'll have no defense except claiming I was framed. Which no jury will believe. Unless you can prove who did it. Which brings me to why I needed you here tonight. Giovanni pulled out a tablet, brought up financial records. These are payment records for the customs officials we contract with. Standard fees documented, everything legal. But look at this. He highlighted a series of transactions. 3 weeks ago, all of them received bonuses. Significant bonuses. Far more than their contract terms specified. Money that came from an account I don't control. Someone else is paying your customs officials. Someone is paying them more than I am. To look the other way during specific inspections, to allow specific containers to be accessed, to falsify specific records. Giovanni's voice was controlled fury. Someone has infiltrated my operation at multiple levels, and I need to know who and why. I studied the financial records, my legal training automatically analyzing patterns and anomalies. The payments were sophisticated, routed through shell companies and offshore accounts, designed to look legitimate on surface inspection. But one detail caught my attention. A routing number that appeared in multiple transactions. A routing number I'd seen before. In FBI case files. In wire transfer authorizations. In evidence Agent Reed had shown me months ago during our first meeting. My blood went cold. What is it? Giovanni asked, seeing my expression change. This routing number. I pointed to the screen. It's familiar. I need to check something. I pulled out my phone. My regular phone, not the encrypted one, and searched through old emails trying to remember where I'd seen it. Buried in documentation Reed had sent me months ago. Examples of how federal agencies tracked money laundering operations. The routing number belonged to an FBI operational account. Lauren. Giovanni's voice was careful. What did you find? I looked up at him, my mind racing through implications and connections and possibilities I didn't want to consider. The money paying your customs officials, I said slowly. It's coming from an FBI account. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Giovanni spoke, his voice deadly quiet. Explain. I can't. Not without. I stopped trying to think clearly through panic and confusion. Giovanni, if this is real, if the FBI is actively framing you by planting evidence, then every piece of evidence they have is contaminated. Every case they're building is fruit of a poison tree. His eyes were hard, calculating. Or you're lying to me. Protecting your source, creating reasonable doubt, playing both sides until you can figure out which one serves you better. I'm not lying. Prove it. He held out his hand. Give me your phone. Show me where you saw that routing number. Giovanni. Show me, Lauren. Right now. Or I'll assume you're working with whoever is trying to destroy me. My heart hammered against my ribs. If I gave him my phone, he'd see the emails from Reed. See the communication patterns, the coded language, the evidence that I'd been cooperating with federal investigators. But if I didn't, he'd know I was hiding something. The choice I'd been avoiding for months was finally here. Tell Giovanni the truth and destroy any chance of federal protection. Or maintain the lie and watch him realize I'd been betraying him all along. I can't, I said finally. Giovanni's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes went cold and dark and absolutely lethal. Can't. Or won't. Both. I stepped back, even though Matteo and the other security immediately closed in, blocking any escape route. Giovanni, I can explain. Don't. His voice cut through the warehouse like a blade. Don't explain, don't justify, don't try to manipulate me with more lies. Just answer one question. Are you working with the FBI? Could have lied. Could have denied everything, played innocent, bought myself time to figure out what to do next. But I was so fucking tired of lying. Yes, I said. I've been cooperating with an agent named Thomas Reed for 6 months. He approached me in Boston, offered immunity and protection if I helped build a case against you. I agreed because I thought you were guilty. I thought that you could destroy me and keep Luca safe. Giovanni's voice was hollow. How much did you give them? Financial records, shipping manifests, meeting notes, everything I had access to through my legal work. The words came out mechanical, emotionless. But Giovanni, if Reed is the one planting evidence, if this whole case is fabricated, then everything I gave him was used to build a lie. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. You didn't know, or you didn't care. He moved closer, and I saw murder in his eyes. Not metaphorical murder. Actual literal intent to kill. You've been sleeping in my bed, working in my organization, playing mother to our son while secretly gathering evidence to put me in prison for the rest of my life. And you expect me to believe you didn't know the case was fabricated. I don't expect you to believe anything. I'm just telling you the truth. My voice cracked despite my best efforts. I thought I was protecting Luca from a dangerous criminal. I thought you were guilty. But if you're not, if someone is framing you, then I've been helping them do it. Giovanni pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. Matteo, take her to the office. Lock the door. No one in or out without my authorization. Giovanni, please. I said go. He wouldn't look at me. I need to think. And I need you away from me before I do something we'll both regret. Matteo's hand closed on my elbow, firm but not painful. I let him guide me away from the containers, from Giovanni's dark fury, from the evidence that proved I'd been manipulated or malicious. I still wasn't sure which. The office was small, windowless, furnished with a desk and 2 chairs and nothing else. Matteo positioned himself outside the door, and I heard the lock click into place. I was a prisoner. In Giovanni's warehouse, surrounded by his men, trapped in the consequences of choices I'd thought were righteous. I pulled out the encrypted phone, hands shaking, and typed a message to Reed. Ferrante knows. FBI routing numbers in evidence payments. Explain now. The response took 5 minutes. 5 minutes that felt like hours. Extraction team en route. They come. Do not engage. We'll handle Ferrante. You're framing him. The evidence is planted. The evidence is real. Ferrante is lying to you. Standard manipulation tactics. Trust your training. I saw the financial records. FBI accounts paying his customs officials to plant drugs. Explain. Another long pause. Then, those accounts are part of the investigation. We're tracking where Ferrante's money goes. You're misreading the evidence. I'm a corporate lawyer. I know how to read financial records. You're lying. Lauren, you need to calm down. You're in danger. Ferrante is violent when threatened. Let us extract you safely, and we'll debrief properly. Send me the chain of custody for the heroin evidence. Every piece. That's classified. Then I'm done cooperating. You signed an immunity agreement. You don't get to quit. Watch me. I powered off the encrypted phone, smashed it against the desk until the screen cracked and the components separated. Destroyed the SIM card, the memory chip, every piece that could connect me to Reed. Then I sat down to wait for whatever Giovanni decided to do with me. An hour later the door opened. Not Giovanni, one of his other men, the older one from the morning meeting. Mrs. Ferrante, come with me please. Where? Mr. Ferrante is ready to see you. I followed him through the warehouse to a different section, an actual office building attached to the port facility. Giovanni was in a conference room, surrounded by laptops and documents, looking like he'd aged a decade in the hour since I'd seen him. Sit, he said without looking up. Sep. I've been reviewing everything you had access to in your legal work, cross-referencing it with evidence the FBI would need to build their case. He pulled up something on one of the laptops, turned it to face me. These are the documents you photographed. I know because I have security cameras in the legal department that you didn't know about. Standard precaution for sensitive information. I stared at the screen. Footage of me, alone in my apartment, photographing shipping manifests and financial records with the encrypted phone Reed had given me. "I've been watching you for 3 weeks," Giovanni continued, his voice flat. "Waiting to see how far you'd go, what you'd take, who you'd give it to. Wondering if maybe you'd come to me, confess, ask for help instead of betraying me. Giovanni, I checked the routing numbers you flagged. Traced them through 14 layers of shell companies and offshore accounts. You were right. They originate from an FBI operational fund." He finally looked at me. "But they also route through accounts controlled by someone else. Someone who's been using FBI resources to build a case against me while simultaneously using my resources to traffic actual drugs." "Who?" "Your federal agent, Thomas Reed." Giovanni's expression was grim. "He's not investigating me. He's framing me while running his own trafficking operation through my ports, using FBI credentials to access my facilities, plant evidence, create a case that will send me to prison while he takes over my shipping routes and connections." I felt the world tilt. That's insane. Federal agents don't. Federal agents are human, corruptible, ambitious, capable of anything if the payoff is big enough. Giovanni stood, paced to the window. "Reed approached you 6 months ago, yes? Right after Luca was born. When you were vulnerable, scared, desperate for protection." "Yes. Perfect target. New mother, recently divorced, already suspicious of her ex-husband's activities. Easy to manipulate into cooperating with an investigation that would give her leverage and security." His jaw clenched. "And I walked right into it by showing up at that hospital. Made you visible, made Luca visible, gave Reed the perfect pressure point to ensure your cooperation. But the immunity agreement is worthless. Because the moment Reed arrests me based on planted evidence, his case falls apart. Fruit of the poison tree, like you said. Which means you never had immunity. You never had protection. You were just a useful idiot gathering real information that Reed could use to make his fabricated case look legitimate." I stood on shaking legs, crossed to where Giovanni stood. "I need to see the evidence. All of it. Everything you have on Reed." "Why?" "So you can warn him. Destroy evidence. Find another way to betray me. So I can help you destroy him." I met his dark gaze. "If what you're saying is true, if Reed has been using me to frame you while running drugs through your operation, then I want him dead. Not arrested. Not prosecuted. Dead." Something flickered in Giovanni's expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "You don't mean that." "I absolutely mean it." The rage I'd been suppressing for months erupted, burning through guilt and confusion and every careful manipulation I'd constructed. "He used my son as leverage. Used my fear, my desperation, my love for Luca to turn me into a weapon against you. If that's true, he dies. And I want to be the one who kills him." Giovanni studied me for a long moment, and I saw him weighing the truth of my words against the possibility that this was just another manipulation. "Okay," he said finally. "But first, we need to deal with the extraction team Reed mentioned. They'll be here soon, and when they arrive, we need to control the situation." "What kind of extraction team?" "FBI tactical. Probably 5 to 7 agents, thinking they're rescuing you from a dangerous criminal." Giovanni pulled out his phone, started typing orders. "But if Reed is dirty, his team might not be official FBI. Might be mercenaries, hired operators, people willing to kill witnesses who know too much. Including me. Including you." He looked up from his phone. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Reed back. Tell him you're safe, that you've convinced me you're on my side, that you have access to more evidence. Set up a meeting for tomorrow. And then we see if he shows up alone like a legitimate agent would, or with a team designed to eliminate problems." Giovanni's expression was cold, calculated. The predator I'd married fully present now. "If he's dirty, we'll know. And then we'll handle it. Handle it how? However necessary." He moved closer, caught my chin in his hand. But understand this, Lauren. If you betray me again, if this is just another game, if you're playing both sides, I will not be merciful. Family or not, mother of my child or not, I will end you. Are we clear? I should have been terrified. Should have run, fought, done anything except stand there looking into the eyes of a man who just threatened to kill me. But I wasn't scared. I was relieved. Because finally we were being honest with each other. Crystal clear, I said. He kissed me then, hard, claiming, full of fury and possession and something that might have been grief for what we'd destroyed. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, Giovanni pressed his forehead to mine. I still love you, he said quietly. Even after everything. Even knowing what you've done. I still love you, and I hate myself for it. I know, I said. Because I feel the same way. It was the truest thing I'd said in months. And the most damning. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. I made the call to Reed at 2 a.m. from Giovanni's secure line. Voice carefully modulated to sound shaken but cooperative. Thomas, thank God. Okay. Giovanni bought the story about misreading the financial records. He thinks I'm still on his side. Lauren, thank Christ. Where are you? Reed's voice was tight with what sounded like genuine concern. We have a team ready to extract you. No. Don't send anyone yet. I glanced at Giovanni, who was listening through a secondary device. His expression unreadable. He's giving me access to everything. His entire operation, the real financial records, connections to international partners. If I disappear now, we lose it all. It's too dangerous. If he suspects. He doesn't suspect. He's desperate to prove his innocence. The lie came easily now, smooth as glass. Give me 48 hours. I can get you everything you need for an airtight case. Not just the drug trafficking, but money laundering, racketeering, connections to organized crime families across 3 continents. Silence on the line. I could almost hear Reed calculating, weighing his options. 48 hours, he said finally. But I want daily check-ins. And if anything feels wrong, you extract immediately. We'll handle the rest. Understood. I'll call tomorrow night with an update. After I hung up, Giovanni replayed the conversation, analyzing every word, every inflection. He's suspicious, Giovanni observed. But greedy. The promise of a bigger case overrides his caution. Will he come alone? No chance. But he'll wait before moving his team into position. Gives us time to prepare. Giovanni pulled up a map of the port facility on his laptop. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow night, you'll call Reed again. Tell him you have physical evidence. Documents, ledgers, proof of everything. Set up a meeting here. He pointed to a warehouse on the eastern edge of the complex. Isolated, one entrance, easy to control. And when he arrives, we see who he brings. How many men, what kind of weapons, whether they're official FBI or private contractors. Giovanni's tone was clinical, detached. If he comes with legitimate agents, we'll know he's clean. We turn over everything we have on the frame job, cooperate fully, let the system work. And if he doesn't, then we confirm he's dirty. And we eliminate the threat. Giovanni met my eyes. All of it. Reed, his team, anyone who knows too much to let live. I should have felt horror. Should have argued, pushed back, insisted there had to be another way. But sitting in that warehouse at 2 a.m., surrounded by evidence of betrayal from every direction, all I felt was cold, calculated fury. I want to be there, I said. When you confront him. I want Reed to see my face, know that I figured it out, understand that he used the wrong person. Lauren, I'm not asking permission. I leaned forward. He used my child as leverage. Used my fear to turn me into a weapon. If you're right about him, if he's been running drugs through your operation while framing you, then I helped him do it. I gave him legitimate intelligence that made his fabricated case look real. I owe you this. Giovanni studied me for a long moment, and I saw him weighing my words, my conviction, my transformation from the woman who'd fled his world to whatever I was becoming now. "Okay," he said finally. "But you follow my lead. You don't act without my signal. And if shooting starts, you get behind cover and stay there until it's over." Agreed. We spent the rest of the night planning. Giovanni's people were professionals. They'd handled territorial disputes, rival organizations, law enforcement complications. This was just another operation, another problem to solve with precision and overwhelming force. By dawn we had a strategy. By noon we had contingencies for every variable. By evening, when I made my second call to Reed, I was calm, focused, committed to seeing this through to whatever bloody conclusion waited. "Thomas, I have it. Everything you asked for and more." My voice was steady, rehearsed. Physical documents, financial ledgers, recordings of conversations. But it's too much to transport safely. You need to come here, see it in person, bring whatever team you need to secure the evidence. "Where is here?" Reed asked carefully. I gave him the location Giovanni had selected. "Warehouse 7, eastern section of the port. Midnight tomorrow. Come alone or bring backup, I don't care. But this is the only window. Giovanni is moving operations next week. And everything will be gone." "Lauren, this sounds like a trap." "It's not. It's your case gift-wrapped with a bow on top." I let frustration bleed into my voice. "But if you don't trust me after 6 months of cooperation, then I'll destroy everything myself and disappear. Your choice." Another pause. Longer this time. "Midnight tomorrow," Reed said finally. "I'll be there." After I hung up, Giovanni nodded slowly. "He'll bring a team. Probably 6 to 8 men. If they're FBI, they'll identify themselves, show credentials, follow protocol. If they're contractors, then we'll know he's dirty." "Then we'll know," Giovanni agreed. "And then we'll end this." The next 36 hours passed in tense preparation. Giovanni brought in additional security. Men I hadn't seen before, hard-faced and efficient, the kind who'd seen combat and worse. They positioned themselves throughout the warehouse complex, invisible but ready, weapons checked and rechecked. I spent the time with Luca, memorizing his face, his laugh, his small hands gripping my fingers like I was his entire world. Because after tomorrow, everything would change. Either Reed would prove to be legitimate, and I'd have to face prosecution for destroying evidence and warning Giovanni. Or Reed would prove to be corrupt, and I'd have participated in whatever violence Giovanni deemed necessary. There was no scenario where I remained innocent. That ship had sailed the moment I'd agreed to gather evidence against Giovanni. Or maybe it had sailed years earlier, when I'd married a man I knew was dangerous and told myself I could change him. Jessica called that afternoon. I almost didn't answer, but knowing I might never get another chance made me pick up. "Lauren, where the hell have you been? You've been ghosting me for weeks, and I'm about 5 seconds from filing a missing persons report." "I'm okay. We're okay. You don't sound okay. You sound like someone who's about to do something incredibly stupid." I pause. "What's going on?" "Really?" I wanted to tell her everything. Wanted to unload the whole impossible situation onto my best friend and let her help me figure out what the right choice was. But there was no right choice anymore. Only degrees of wrong. "I can't explain right now," I said finally. "But I need you to know that whatever happens, whatever you hear about me, I was trying to protect Luca. That was always the priority." "Lauren, you're scaring me." "I know. I'm sorry." My voice cracked despite my best efforts. "If something happens to me, if I can't take care of Luca, there are documents. Legal guardianship papers naming you. Giovanni knows where they are. He'll honor them." "Lauren, I have to go. Love you. Thank you for being my friend even when I didn't deserve it." I hung up before she could respond, powered off my phone, and tried to ignore the tears streaming down my face. Giovanni found me in the nursery an hour later, standing over Luca's crib, watching our son sleep. "Having second thoughts?" he asked quietly. "Constantly. But not about tomorrow. About everything that led us here." I turned to face him. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd been honest with each other from the beginning? If you'd let me in during our marriage, if I'd trusted you enough to tell you about Luca, if we'd chosen truth instead of self-protection. Every single day. Giovanni moved closer, stood beside me looking down at our son. But we can't go back. Can only move forward and try to be better than we were. Are we better? Or are we just more honest about how broken we are? Maybe both. His hand found mine, and the touch sent familiar electricity up my arm. For what it's worth, Lauren, I don't regret having you in my life. Even with everything that's happened, even knowing you betrayed me, even facing whatever tomorrow brings, I don't regret you. You should. Probably. But I don't. He turned me to face him, caught my face in his hands. And after tomorrow, assuming we both survive, I want to try again. Really try. Not the performance we had during our marriage. Not the careful distance we've maintained since Boston. But something real. Honest. Built on who we actually are instead of who we pretend to be. I don't know if I'm capable of that anymore. Then we'll figure it out together. He kissed me softly, gently, like I was something precious instead of something that had tried to destroy him. But first, we have to survive tomorrow. Midnight came faster than I wanted. I stood in Warehouse 7 with Giovanni and 20 of his men positioned in shadows, watching the single entrance, waiting for Reed to arrive and reveal his true nature. The warehouse was exactly as Giovanni had described. Isolated, one entrance, concrete walls that would contain any firefight. The evidence we'd promised was laid out on a table in the center of the space. Real documents mixed with fabricated ones, bait designed to look legitimate enough to draw Reed inside. He's late, I said, checking my watch. 12:14 a.m. Tactical delay. He's positioning his team, making sure the approach is clear. Giovanni spoke into his radio in Italian, checking positions. Everyone stays hidden until we confirm numbers and identity. No one moves until my signal. At 12:27, headlights appeared in the distance. 3 vehicles. 2 black SUVs flanking a sedan. They parked 50 yards from the warehouse entrance, and I saw figures emerge. Giovanni pulled out binoculars with night vision, counted silently. 8 men. Alarmed. Moving in tactical formation. He lowered the binoculars, his expression grim. No FBI badges visible. No official credentials. They're contractors. He's dirty, I whispered. He's dirty, Giovanni confirmed. Which means what happens next is self-defense. Reed entered first, flanked by 4 men with weapons drawn. The other 3 remained outside, covering approaches. He saw me standing beside the evidence table and smiled. Cold, predatory, nothing like the concerned federal agent who'd promised me protection. Lauren, I have to admit, I wasn't sure you'd actually go through with this. Go through with what? Ask carefully. The betrayal. The setup. Warning Ferrante about our meeting. Reed moved closer, and his men fanned out, covering the warehouse interior. Did you really think I wouldn't have surveillance on you? That I wouldn't notice when you destroyed your encrypted phone and stopped following protocols? Thomas. Agent Reed to you. And I'm disappointed, Lauren. You were such a good asset. Provided excellent intelligence. Made our fabricated case look completely legitimate. He gestured to the evidence on the table. But then you had to go and develop a conscience. Start asking questions about chain of custody and routing numbers, and whether the evidence was real. So it is fabricated. All of it. Not all of it. Some of Ferrante's operations are genuinely illegal. Just not the drug trafficking we've been pinning on him. Reed smiled. That's all me. Heroin moved through his ports, sold through his connections, profits laundered through his legitimate businesses. And when the investigation is complete, he takes the fall while I take over his entire network. Except I'm not taking the fall, Giovanni said, stepping out from the shadows behind me. Because you made one critical mistake. Reed spun, weapon rising, but Giovanni's men were already moving. emerging from concealment, weapons trained on Reed's team, overwhelming force that made resistance pointless. "Drop your weapons," Giovanni ordered calmly. "All of you. Now." For a moment, it looked like Reed would fight. His men tensed, calculating odds, weighing options. Then Reed lowered his weapon, and his team followed suit. "Smart choice," Giovanni said. "Now, here's what's going to happen. You can tell me everything. Who else is involved, how long this operation has been running, where the drugs are coming from, where the money goes. You're going to give me names, accounts, evidence of your entire conspiracy. And if you're very cooperative and very lucky, I might let you live." Reed laughed. Sharp, bitter, resigned. "You think I'm afraid of you, Ferrante? You think threats work on someone who spent 15 years undercover in organizations that make yours look like a college fraternity? I don't think threats work on you at all." Giovanni gestured, and two of his men moved forward, cable ties appearing. "But documentation will. Evidence of your crimes, provided to the right people in federal law enforcement, the ones who aren't corrupt. You'll spend the rest of your life in a federal supermax, dealing with prisoners you put there during your legitimate years. I'm told they're not very forgiving of dirty agents. Unless you cooperate," I added, surprising myself with how cold my voice sounded. "Give Giovanni what he needs, and maybe you get a clean death instead of 40 years of torture." Reed's eyes shifted to me, and I saw recognition there, understanding that I'd chosen a side and it wasn't his. "You stupid bitch," he said quietly. "You have no idea what you've done. What he is. What he'll turn you into. I know exactly what he is. And I'm choosing him anyway." I moved closer to Reed, letting him see the fury in my eyes. "You used my son. Used my fear, my desperation, my love for Luca to manipulate me into destroying his father. That's unforgivable. I was trying to save you. You were trying to use me. And now you're going to pay for it." Giovanni's hand settled on my shoulder. Warning or comfort, I wasn't sure. "Lauren, step back. Let my people handle this." "No." I pulled out the gun Giovanni had given me earlier, felt its weight in my hands, the cold certainty of what I was about to do. "He dies. Tonight. Here. And I'm the one who does it. Lauren." Giovanni's voice held warning now. "Think about what you're doing. There's no going back from this. I crossed that line the moment I started gathering evidence to destroy you. This just makes it official." I raised the weapon, aimed at Reed's chest, and felt nothing but cold calculation. "Any last words?" Reed stared at me, and something like respect flickered in his expression. "You really think killing me changes anything? I'm not working alone. This operation is bigger than one agent, bigger than Ferrante's organization. You pull this trigger, and you sign your own death warrant. Then I'll die knowing I protected my family." My finger tightened on the trigger. "Which is more than you can say." "Stop." Giovanni's hand covered mine on the gun, gentle but firm. "Not like this. Not you. Let me handle it." "Why?" "Afraid I'll develop a conscience. Afraid you'll regret it." His dark eyes held mine. "Taking a life changes you, Lauren. Even when it's justified. Even when they deserve it. You can't undo that moment, can't unsee what it looks like when someone dies by your hand. And I don't want that for you. Too late. I'm already changed. Already broken. This just makes it official." But my hand was shaking now, my resolve wavering. Reed saw the hesitation, tried to exploit it. "Listen to him, Lauren. You're not a killer. You're a mother, a lawyer, someone who believes in justice. Don't let Ferrante turn you into something you're not." Pulled the trigger. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Reed staggered back, hand clutching his shoulder where I'd aimed. Not a kill shot, but painful, debilitating. "I'm not trying to kill you," I said, lowering the weapon. "I'm just making sure you understand that I'm willing to. That I'm done being afraid. Done being manipulated. Done being anyone's asset." Giovanni took the gun from my hands. His expression unreadable. "Well, that was unexpected." I'm full of surprises lately. Reed slumped against one of his men, blood seeping between his fingers. You're going to regret this. Both of you. Maybe. Giovanni gestured to his men. Take them to the holding facility. Medical attention for Reed. I need him alive to provide testimony. The rest can be processed for deportation. Deportation? Yes. Most of Reed's team aren't actually American. They're contracted military from places with less stringent regulations on violence. Giovanni's tone was matter-of-fact. We'll send them home with enough money to forget they were ever here. Cheaper than killing them, less complicated legally. As Reed was dragged away, still cursing, Giovanni turned to me. You aimed for his shoulder, not his chest. I wanted him alive to provide evidence. Like you said. That's not why. Giovanni stepped closer, studied my face in the dim warehouse lighting. You hesitated because you're not ready to cross that final line. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Does that make me weak? It makes you human. He pulled me against his chest, held me while I shook with adrenaline and relief and something that might have been grief. You don't have to become me, Lauren. You don't have to let this world turn you into something you're not. But I helped you capture a federal agent. I'm complicit in whatever happens next. You're complicit in stopping a corrupt agent who was trafficking drugs while framing innocent people. That's different. Giovanni pressed a kiss to my forehead. And tomorrow, we'll turn over everything we have to the FBI's Internal Affairs Division. Let them clean their own house. We provide evidence, testimony, documentation, everything they need to prosecute Reed properly. You're going to cooperate with the FBI? I'm going to cooperate with legitimate law enforcement to remove a threat to my family. What they do with that information is their business. He pulled back slightly, met my eyes. But first we're going home. Luca. To our life. To figuring out what normal looks like when nothing about us has ever been normal. Normal, I repeated. That sounds terrifying. That sounds perfect, Giovanni corrected. Come on. Let's get out of here before something else explodes. 3 weeks later, I sat in a conference room at FBI headquarters in Manhattan, watching Giovanni provide sworn testimony about Agent Thomas Reed's operation. The FBI's Internal Affairs Division had moved quickly once we'd provided evidence. Financial records, surveillance footage, testimony from Reed's captured team members. Within 48 hours, they'd launched a full investigation. Within a week, they'd arrested 3 other agents involved in Reed's conspiracy. Reed himself was in federal custody, facing charges that would keep him imprisoned for the rest of his life. His cooperation had exposed a network of corruption that reached into 3 federal agencies and multiple state organizations. And I was sitting beside Giovanni as his attorney, helping him navigate the testimony that would clear his name of drug trafficking charges while exposing the conspiracy that had targeted him. Mr. Ferrante, the lead investigator said, reviewing documents, you understand that while we're grateful for your cooperation in exposing Agent Reed's corruption, this doesn't mean your organization is exempt from scrutiny? I understand completely, Giovanni replied calmly. My businesses operate in gray areas. I don't pretend otherwise. But drug trafficking isn't one of those areas. Never has been, never will be. Because of your mother, I added quietly, and Giovanni's hand found mine under the table. Because of my mother, he confirmed. After the interview, we walked out of FBI headquarters into a cold November afternoon. Luca was with his nanny at the apartment, probably napping or destroying something in that destructive way 9-month-olds specialized in. That went well, I said as we climbed into the waiting car. As well as cooperating with federal law enforcement can go. Giovanni settled beside me, and Matteo pulled away from the curb. But it's done. Reed is finished. His operation is dismantled. And we have official documentation that my organization wasn't involved in drug trafficking. What about the other things? The gray areas. The FBI knows I'm not a saint. But as long as I'm not moving heroin or running guns to terrorists, they have bigger priorities. Giovanni's expression was grim. And I've made it clear that any future investigations will be met with full cooperation. Legitimate businesses remain legitimate. Everything else stays buried deep enough that even the most aggressive prosecutor can't prove anything. That's the compromise we're living with. That's the reality of my world. Our world now. He turned to face me. Can you live with it? Really? Not just for Luca's sake, but for yourself. I thought about the past months. The lies, the betrayals, the moment I'd pulled the trigger and chosen violence over law. The lines I'd crossed, the person I'd become. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I'm willing to try. That's all I'm asking. Giovanni pulled me against him, and I let myself relax into his warmth. We'll figure it out together. Build something real from all this wreckage. And if we can't, then at least we tried. At least we chose honesty and partnership instead of secrets and self-protection. He pressed a kiss to my hair. That's more than we had before. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Wasn't redemption or absolution or any kind of happily ever after. But it was real, honest, built on who we actually were instead of who we pretended to be. And maybe that was enough. Epilogue. The house she built from ashes. 3 years later. The gallery opening was everything I'd spent 6 months planning. Intimate, elegant, strategically positioned between the legitimate art world and the circles where Giovanni's influence actually mattered. I stood near the entrance, watching wealthy collectors admire paintings by emerging artists I'd discovered in Brooklyn studios and Bronx warehouses. The gallery was mine, purchased with money I'd earned through legitimate legal work, decorated according to my taste, stocked with art I'd personally selected. My name was on the lease. My vision filled the walls. It was the first thing in my adult life that belonged entirely to me. Mama, I'm hungry. Luca appeared at my elbow, 4 years old now, dark hair falling into darker eyes that were pure Giovanni. Can we get pizza? After the opening, baby. Your father is bringing dinner. But I'm hungry now. He deployed the pout that worked on Giovanni every single time, that had already turned my husband into someone who couldn't deny his son anything. Then have some cheese and crackers from the catering table. But don't spill on your clothes. Luca scampered off, already targeting the food display with single-minded determination. I watched him go, this beautiful boy who'd somehow survived everything his parents had put him through, and felt the familiar mixture of love and guilt that defined my motherhood. He's got your stubbornness, Jessica observed, appearing beside me with a glass of wine. And Giovanni's complete disregard for authority. Lucky us. Lucky him, more like. Kid's going to rule the world someday. Jessica studied the crowd, the paintings, the careful curation that had gone into this space. You did good, Lauren. Really good. This gallery is exactly what you always said you wanted back in law school. Before I married a mobster and destroyed my entire life. Before you figured out who you actually were. Jessica clinked her glass against mine. I'm proud of you. For surviving. For building something real. For not letting Giovanni's world consume you completely. It consumed parts of me. I took a sip of wine. Watched Giovanni enter with our daughter Sophia balanced on his hip. 18 months old, she had my red hair and Giovanni's intensity, already wrapping her father around her tiny finger. I'm not the person I was before Boston. Before everything. No one's asking you to be. That person was naive and kind of judgmental. Jessica smiled. This version is more interesting. Harder, yes. But also more honest about who you are and what you're capable of. Giovanni spotted me across the gallery, and something softened in his expression. The same shift I'd seen 3 years ago when I'd chosen him over Reed, over federal protection, over the fantasy that I could remain separate from his world. Your husband is staring at you like you're the only person in the room, Jessica observed. It's disgustingly romantic. It's complicated. Everything about you two is complicated. That's why it works. Giovanni navigated through the crowd, Sophia chattering in Italian about something only she understood. When he reached me, he kissed my cheek, Let Sophia transfer to my arms with the practiced efficiency of parents who'd learned to coordinate child trading in social situations. Beautiful opening, he said quietly. I'm proud of you. You've said that 3 times tonight. I'll say it 30 more before we leave. He gestured to the paintings. These artists, they're good. Really good. You have an excellent eye. I learn from the best. You've been collecting art for years. I've been buying expensive paintings because my advisors told me to. You're actually discovering talent, building careers, creating something meaningful. Giovanni's hand settled on my lower back, that possessive gesture I'd once resented and now found grounding. This gallery is going to be important. I can feel it. Don't invest in it, I said automatically. This is mine. Separate from your businesses, your money, your world. I know. That's why it matters. He pressed a kiss to my temple. But I'm still proud of you. Sophia squirmed, wanting down, and I lowered her to the floor where she immediately toddled toward Luca. Giovanni watched them go, and I saw something complicated cross his face. Love and fear tangled together, the constant awareness that his children were both his greatest joy and his most dangerous vulnerability. They're safe, I said quietly, reading his thoughts. Matteo's team is positioned throughout the building. No one gets in without credentials. And tomorrow we're back to normal routines. Normal, Giovanni repeated with slight irony. Our version of it, anyway. Our version of normal included private security, armored vehicles, background checks on every person who came near our children. It included careful management of which social events we attended, which business associates met our family, which parts of Giovanni's world remained separate from our home life. It included me running a legitimate art gallery while serving as general counsel for Giovanni's operations, navigating the space between legal and criminal with expertise I'd learned through trial and error and moral compromise. It included Giovanni slowly transitioning his businesses toward complete legitimacy, a process that would take decades but had finally begun, motivated by his desire to give our children a world less dangerous than the one he'd inherited. It wasn't the life I'd imagined when I'd applied to law school, when I'd married Giovanni the first time, when I'd fled to Boston convinced I could raise Luca alone. But it was ours. Built on honesty about who we were, what we were capable of, what we'd survived together. I have something for you, Giovanni said, pulling a small box from his jacket pocket. For the opening. Inside was a necklace, delicate gold chain with a small pendant. I lifted it to the light, saw that the pendant was engraved with coordinates. Boston General Hospital, Giovanni explained. The latitude and longitude of where everything changed, where I became a father, where we started building this version of our life. Giovanni, I know it's not romantic. No, it commemorates one of the worst nights of both our lives. But it's also where we chose each other, where we stopped hiding and started being honest. He took the necklace, fastened it around my neck. I wanted you to have a reminder that we survived the worst. Everything else is just details. I touched the pendant, felt its weight against my chest, and tried not to cry at this gallery opening I'd worked so hard to make perfect. I love you, I said quietly. Even though I shouldn't. Even though you're still dangerous and complicated and morally compromised. I love you too. Even though you shot a federal agent and helped me cover up multiple crimes. Giovanni smiled slightly. We're terrible people who are somehow good parents. I consider that a victory. The bar is very low. The bar is realistic. We're doing our best with what we have. He glanced at our children. Luca helping Sophia reach cheese cubes, both of them laughing at something only they understood. And they're happy. I've loved. That's more than either of us had growing up. He wasn't wrong. Giovanni's childhood had been violence and expectation, being shaped into his father's image whether he wanted it or not. Mine had been loss. Parents dead too young, family connections severed, learning to survive alone because there was no alternative. Together we were building something different for Luca and Sophia. Not perfect, not entirely safe, but honest about the complexities, the dangers, the moral compromises that defined our world. Mrs. Ferrante. Marcus Rossi appeared, champagne in hand, looking uncomfortable in the art gallery setting. Wonderful opening. Giovanni mentioned you'd personally selected every piece. I did. Do you see something you like? Actually, yes. The abstract in the corner, the one with red and black. It reminds me of something, though I can't place what. Blood and shadows, I thought but didn't say. Violence made aesthetic. The kind of beauty you could only see if you'd survived darkness. It's from an emerging artist in Bushwick. Her work explores trauma through color and form. Very powerful. I'll take it. Marcus pulled out his phone to arrange payment. And Giovanni, we should discuss the Brooklyn acquisition before next week's closing. Tomorrow, Giovanni said firmly. Tonight is for Lauren's opening. Business can wait. After Marcus left, I turned to Giovanni. The Brooklyn acquisition. That's the warehouse district property. Legitimate real estate development. Mixed-use residential and commercial. All permits in order. All financing through legal channels. Giovanni's tone was carefully neutral. I'm not my father, Lauren. I'm not building an empire through violence and fear. But I am building something our children can inherit without shame. Will they want it? Want to be part of your world? I hope they'll be smart enough to choose something else. Giovanni watched Luca demonstrate some elaborate game to Sophia, both children completely absorbed in their imaginary world. But if they do choose this life, I want it to be a choice they make with full knowledge of what it costs. Not something thrust upon them like it was thrust upon me. That's very evolved for a former mob enforcer. I've had good teachers. He smiled at me. Mostly you, actually. Showing me that power without morality is just another form of weakness. That protecting my family means more than eliminating threats. It means building a world they can actually thrive in. The gallery was beginning to empty, collectors making final purchases, artists networking, the opening winding down toward its successful conclusion. I'd sold 7 pieces, connected 3 artists with serious buyers, established my gallery as a legitimate player in the New York art scene. It was everything I'd wanted. And it was only possible because Giovanni had supported it, provided security, covered startup costs I'd later repaid, used his connections to bring serious collectors through the door. The irony wasn't lost on me. My independence, my separate identity, my legitimate business. All of it was built on foundations Giovanni had helped establish. We were too entangled to ever be truly separate. But maybe that was okay. Maybe partnership meant accepting that you couldn't always distinguish where one person ended and the other began. Later that night, after the gallery had closed and the children were asleep, I found Giovanni in his study, reviewing documents by lamplight. You should be sleeping, I said from the doorway. So should you. He set down the papers, gestured for me to join him. But we're both too wired from the opening. I settled into the chair across from his desk, the same position I'd sat in 3 years ago when he'd first shown me evidence of Reed's corruption. Do you ever think about that night at the warehouse? Yes. About what we did. Every day. Giovanni's expression was sober. About whether we made the right choice, whether we should have handled it differently, whether cooperating with internal affairs was enough to balance the violence we participated in. And what conclusion do you reach? That we did the best we could with impossible options. That Reed was dirty, trafficking drugs, framing innocent people. And that stopping him required methods the justice system couldn't accommodate. Giovanni leaned back. Do I wish we'd found a cleaner way? Do I regret stopping him? No. I shot a federal agent. You shot a corrupt criminal who was using federal credentials to traffic narcotics. Context matters. Giovanni paused. But I know you still struggle with it. Still wonder if you crossed a line you can't uncross. Don't you? I crossed that line when I was 16. Every line after that was just degrees of the same thing. His dark eyes met mine. But you weren't raised in violence. Weren't shaped by it from childhood. You chose to cross that line to protect our family. That's different. Is it? Or am I just telling myself that to avoid guilt? Maybe both. Giovanni stood, crossed to where I sat, pulled me to my feet. But what I know for certain is that you're a good mother, a talented curator, a brilliant lawyer, and someone who made an impossible choice under extreme pressure. You're allowed to be complicated. Allowed to contain contradictions. Allowed to be more than one thing at once. What if one of those things is a person I don't want to be? Then you keep choosing every day to be the other things. The mother, the artist, the woman who builds galleries and discovers talent and creates beauty in the world. He pressed his forehead to mine. You're not defined by your worst moment, Lauren. None of us are. Not even you. Especially not me. His hands settled on my hips, familiar and grounding. I'm trying to be better. For you, for our children, for myself. Trying to build a legacy that's more than violence and territory. It's slow work, and I backslide constantly, but I'm trying. I know. I kissed him softly, tasting the truth of his words. And I'm trying too. To forgive myself, to accept who I've become, to build something meaningful instead of just surviving. The gallery is meaningful. The gallery is a start. I pulled back slightly, met his eyes. But I want more. Want to establish scholarships for artists from disadvantaged backgrounds, create mentorship programs. Use the connections I have to actually help people instead of just making money or maintaining appearances. Then do it. Giovanni smiled. I'll support you however you need. Funding, connections, security. Whatever it takes to help you build the life you want. Even if that life doesn't include your world. If I eventually step away from the legal work, focus entirely on the gallery, then Marcus will be disappointed to lose his best counsel, and I'll be proud of you for choosing what you actually want. Giovanni's expression was serious. I don't need you enmeshed in my businesses, Lauren. I need you happy. Need our children to see their mother building something she's passionate about. Need you to be more than just the woman who survived my world. I need you to thrive in spite of it. It was exactly what I needed to hear. Exactly what I'd been afraid he wouldn't say. Thank you, I whispered. For what? For letting me be complicated. For not asking me to choose between being your partner and being myself. I kissed him again, deeper this time, feeling the familiar heat build between us. For still loving me even after seeing what I'm capable of. Always, Giovanni murmured against my mouth. Even when you're impossible, stubborn, morally conflicted, and occasionally violent, I love you. Same, I said, and meant it completely. The next morning, I woke to find a letter on Giovanni's pillow. His handwriting precise and controlled, filling 3 pages with words he'd never say out loud. Lauren, I'm not good at this. At vulnerability, at expressing emotions that feel too large for words, at articulating what you mean to me beyond the simple fact that I love you. But you deserve to know. 3 years ago, I walked into a Boston hospital expecting to find a dying child and an ex-wife who'd kept him secret. What I found instead was a woman who'd been drowning alone, raising our son without help, making impossible choices because she thought she had no other option. I was furious, heartbroken, ready to take Luca and shut you out the way you'd shut me out. But then I watched you with him. Saw how you'd sacrificed everything to keep him safe. Saw how terrified you were of my world. How desperate you were to protect him from becoming what I'd become. And I realized you'd done exactly what I would have done in your position. Made the hard choice, the protective choice, the one that cost you everything but kept him safe. I still wish you'd told me. Still mourn the 7 months I missed. But I understand why you didn't. And I've spent 3 years trying to prove that I'm worth trusting with our children's future. The gallery opening last night reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That you're more than Luca's mother, more than Sophia's mother, more than my wife. You're an artist in your own right, a creator, someone with vision and talent and the courage to build something beautiful in a world that's often ugly. I'm proud of you. Love you. And I promise to spend the rest of our lives supporting your dreams, whatever they are, wherever they take you. Even if that means stepping back from my world completely. Even if that means raising our children differently than I was raised. Even if that means becoming someone better than I thought I could be. You make me want to be better. Thank you for that. Thank you for everything. Always yours, Giovanni. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face, before I heard small feet padding down the hallway. Luca appeared in the doorway, pajamas askew, hair sticking up in wild tufts. Mama crying. Happy tears, baby. I wiped my eyes, set the letter aside. Where's your sister? Papa has her. They're making pancakes. Luca climbed onto the bed, settled against my side. Why happy tears? Because sometimes people surprise you in good ways. Sometimes they're better than you expected them to be. Papa is better than expected. Much better. I kissed his forehead, breathed in his little boy smell of sleep and soap. How would you feel about having another baby brother or sister? Luca considered this seriously. Only if they share toys. Sophia doesn't share. We'll work on that. After Luca scampered back to the kitchen, I sat in the quiet bedroom, listening to my family laugh in the distance, thinking about the life we'd built from ashes and blood and impossible choices. It wasn't perfect. Would never be perfect. But it was ours. And maybe that was the only victory that mattered. 6 months later, the FBI closed the Reed investigation with 17 convictions, 3 forced retirements, and a complete overhaul of their internal oversight procedures. Giovanni's testimony had been crucial, and in exchange, his organization received something close to immunity from further federal scrutiny. Not because he was innocent, but because he'd proven himself more useful as an informant than as a target. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man I'd tried to destroy had ended up cooperating with law enforcement more effectively than any undercover operation could have achieved. And I'd helped make it happen. My gallery had expanded to a second location in Chelsea. I'd established a foundation supporting emerging artists from underrepresented communities. I'd stepped away from legal consulting entirely, passing my clients to Marcus and focusing exclusively on building the art world presence I'd always wanted. Giovanni had kept his promise. Supported every decision, provided resources without controlling outcomes, let me build something that was entirely mine. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, his businesses had shifted toward legitimate operations. Not completely. There were still gray areas, still activities I chose not to examine too closely, but the trajectory was undeniably toward legitimacy. For our children, he said. So they could inherit something more than criminal empire and complicated legacy. For himself, I suspected. Because loving us had given him reason to want to be better. Sophia was 2 now, speaking in full sentences, already showing signs of inheriting both Giovanni's intensity and my stubbornness. Luca was 5, starting kindergarten at an elite private school where his father's reputation ensured excellent treatment and careful oversight. And I was pregnant again. 4 months along, morning sickness finally subsiding, planning for a 3rd child who would grow up in a world slightly less dangerous than the one his siblings had known. You're staring at the sonogram again, Giovanni observed, joining me on the balcony of our Westchester estate. Everything okay? Everything is fine. Better than fine. I leaned into his warmth, felt his arms come around me, protective and grounding. I was just thinking about how different this is from when I was pregnant with Luca. You were alone, terrified, convinced you were making the right choice by keeping him secret. And now I'm here with you, planning nurseries and arguing about names and feeling. I paused, searching for the right word. Safe. Despite everything we've been through, despite knowing what you are and what I've become, I feel safe. Good. Giovanni pressed a kiss to my hair. That's all I ever wanted. For you to feel safe with me instead of in spite of me. It's more than safety. It's trust. Partnership. Knowing that we chose each other with full knowledge of who we are. I turned to face him. That's worth more than safety. It's worth everything. Giovanni smiled. Rare, genuine, the expression he reserved for private moments when his careful control could slip. Have I mentioned lately that I love you? Not in the last hour. You're slipping. Then I love you. Completely, complicatedly, probably unhealthily. His hand settled over my still flat stomach. And I love this baby already. Love the family we're building, the life we're creating, the future we're making possible. Even though it's built on ashes and blood and moral compromise. Especially because of that. Giovanni's expression turned serious. Because we know exactly what it cost. Know what we sacrificed, what we chose, what we're willing to protect. That's a stronger foundation than naivety and idealism ever could be. He wasn't wrong. Our love was complicated, hard-won, built on truth that most people spent lifetimes avoiding. But it was real, honest, worth every impossible choice that had led us here. I stood on the balcony with Giovanni's arms around me, our children playing inside, another child growing beneath my heart, and thought about the letter he'd written after the gallery opening. You make me want to be better. The truth was, we made each other better. Not perfect, not redeemed, not absolved of our sins or freed from our complicated pasts, but better, more honest, more intentional, more aware of what mattered and what didn't. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. I love you too, I said finally. Completely, complicatedly, probably unwisely. Good. Giovanni's voice held satisfaction. Because you're stuck with me now. For better or worse, for legitimate business and gray areas. For whatever our children put us through for the next 18 years minimum. Only 18. I'm thinking they'll be causing problems well into their 30s. Probably. They have your intelligence and my stubbornness. We're doomed. I laughed. Felt some final piece of tension release from my chest. This was our life now. Complicated, imperfect, built on foundations most people would judge harshly. But it was ours. And we'd built it together from the ashes of everything we'd destroyed. That was the price of mercy, I'd learned. The price of revenge. The price of loving someone dangerous and being dangerous yourself. You lost your innocence, your certainty, your ability to see the world in simple terms. But you gained something more valuable. Truth. Partnership. A love that could survive anything because it had already survived everything. And looking out over the estate where our children played, where we'd built our complicated life, where we continued choosing each other despite everything, I decided it was worth it. Every impossible choice, every moral compromise, every line crossed and boundary blurred. Worth it for this moment, this family, this love. Even if it had cost me pieces of my soul I'd never get back. Even if redemption was impossible. Even if the price was everything. It was worth it. And I'd pay it again without hesitation. Then.